Unfortunately, it catches on his Johnson.
If he's plank of the week, he's got a sizable plank.
That's a whole different show.
Plank of the week, Fridays at 7 on Talk.
Hi, I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and I've got a message for you. Welcome back to this blockbuster edition of What Just Happened. It really is a good one, I think. It's so funny that people keep calling me Mega.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is 3 minutes after 1 o'clock. Good afternoon to the empty chair syndrome. Welcome to the home of common sense. So I'm just giggling over a message I've had from Kevin O'Sullivan. Referenced that last comment with Julia. I might come back to that. Meantime, Britain risks becoming an island of strangers, according to Keir Starmer. He's giving a warning. He's launched his major immigration crackdown. Old Stricty Keir vowing to take back control of the borders and close the book on what he's called a squalid chapter in politics and immigration. Does he mean any of it? Does he? Yeah. We'll look at that in more detail in a few moments. Also this afternoon, police have been told to focus on catching actual criminals after a retired constable was handcuffed by his former force over a social media post warning about rising anti-Semitism. It was an extraordinary story. All the similar patterns that we've seen previously alive and well in this. We'll come to that if you're not au fait with it a little later as well. And Britain's largest teaching union have voted to campaign against the Supreme Court's ruling on gender, insisting trans women in schools must be allowed to use ladies' toilets. These people are utterly weird, aren't they? They have something, they're absolutely obsessed with what's in somebody's pants. That seems to be how they roll and how they rumble. Fascinated by it. We'll get the detail a little later. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk, 0344 499 1000. So do you now trust Labour to address and sort the immigration crisis? Every area of the immigration system will be tightened up, says Sir Keir. He's promised Labour will reduce the number of migrants coming to the UK significantly. This was the press conference in Downing Street a little earlier. We'll talk to Theo Usherwood in a few moments, who was there at that conference. We'll get a sense of how this all panned out. It was the government's long-awaited immigration white paper, although, of course, crucially, which was the bit that I think a lot of people were more interested in, there was no numbers given on this. There was no cap that was kind of set on this. But the proposals mean that migrants will be told they must spend a decade in Britain before they can apply for citizenship, and stricter English language requirements will be put in place. I don't think any of that, by the way, I don't think it takes much searching on this, is going to make a blind bit of difference. I don't think the badge of honour of being told you've got citizenship is necessarily the game with some of these people. If you have to waver in limbo for a bit, but knowing you're going to stay anyway while you're in limbo, I think that's fine. Doesn't really matter. Starmer said, make no mistake, this plan means migration will fall. That is a promise. He said, we must avoid becoming, and you heard that line again, an island of strangers. Now, what do you sense that he means by an island of strangers? Is he talking about social cohesion? If he is, it's the point that I've banged on about, often feeling like a solo voice on this. Forever, I think it's the most key and crucial part of this story. We can talk about people, you know, getting healthcare when they would have had to have paid for it somewhere else. We can talk about all this stuff. Social cohesion is absolutely the core, the epicenter of this problem, and it is a problem, and it's where it all goes wrong. Social cohesion is absolutely front and centre to the whole thing. Now, of course, Starmer blamed the Tories, not entirely unreasonably, but we know this is now under his watch, and what we really know is this entire subject doesn't really sit comfortably in his political DNA. His radar does not bleep on this issue. He's got sort of a fake response, if you like, to what he thinks the public want to hear. But it will always fall on deaf ears. It will always sound a bit daft. It's, you know, a bit like hearing a posh person try to swear or sound a bit hard. It just looks ridiculous. And hearing Starmer wheel out the stats and the facts on this one and what they're going to do and what they're not going to do is always just going to sound a little bit empty. But, you know, he's our Prime Minister, whether we like him or not. So I want him to succeed on this. I just don't sense he will. He's got a couple of things in his favour, which I'll come to in just a second. Do you now trust Labour to sort out the immigration crisis? Now, here's the key bit. And I will come to some of the things that Labour members have said in the past on immigration. So in the year to June, this is legal migration, all right? This is not the Channel crossing stuff. He didn't even talk about that. Whether it will appear anywhere in the white paper, I don't know. But this is the legal stuff. So in the year to June 2023, we remember that year when the numbers were absolutely jaw-dropping. Net migration was 906,000. That's net. Just shy of 1 million. Extraordinary. But in the year to June 2024, it was 728,000. So it had gone down. There's a third been wiped off the net figure. A week on Thursday, the latest data will be published. Now, I find this interesting. Some say it might be as low as 320,000, which would be an extraordinary drop from the 906,000 that we had previously. So you're talking about 600,000 drop net migration. There is no possible way, in no possible world, that the reason for that could fall to Keir Starmer's tough policies on anything. This predates Starmer. You don't get to that kind of figure when you've been in office for half an hour. There's no way he can claim that. What would be the reasons for it if it turns out to be true, 300 and odd thousand? Well, the Tories cut back a little on visas. The mood music was put out there about students overstaying. Some of those moody schools and universities that were set up for no other reason than to get people into the country, blah, blah, blah. It might be all of that, but there's nothing that Keir Starmer's done since last July that's going to somehow mean he's responsible for a massive drop in legal migration. 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. So we now have a government that's saying they're going to get tough on this. We've got this no stone unturned when it comes to immigration. They didn't always think like this, of course. Let me remind you of some of the things that the current ministers, high-profile ministers, used to say. Yvette Cooper in 2015 wanted every city, town and borough to take 10 refugee families. In 2015, she held up a sign saying, "Refugees welcome," and said the government needed to do more to help refugees. We remember 2021, a little more recent, Angela Rayner slamming arguments for the NHS to be less reliant on migration. She said our NHS would collapse without the staff who were born overseas. NHS staff don't deserve this cheap xenophobia, she said. Bridget Phillipson, in 2023, just 2 years ago, attacked Tory plans to lower student migration numbers. I mean, there's a lot of got a PhD in this stuff, OK? It's not in their blood. They don't believe it. They don't think it. What I've just read out there is what they really think. What they're saying today is what they are forced to say, rather than in their inner core of political ideology. Theo Usherwood is with us to look over the big stories of the day. Of course, the question around this, Theo, is, you know, is this Starmer's... In fact, I think he said something, you were there at the press conference today, something like, you know, this was already in the planning. This is not a political move because of, you know, what happened to reform. I don't believe that for 1 second.
No, of course not. And nobody in the room at this morning's press conference thought that this immigration white paper, the way it was presented, and of course the substance of what was in it, had anything to do with anything other than, of course, those substantial gains that Reform made, firstly in the local council elections. They gained 2 mayors and, of course, one Runcorn and Helsby, the by-election, which was Labour's 14th safest seat in the country. So this was about the way the presentation, the effort that had been put into it, the measures that have been introduced are absolutely focused on seeing off the threat from Nigel Farage and from Reform.
Yeah, indeed. There was a lot in this. However, obviously he blamed the Tories, and as I said at the beginning, not entirely unreasonable. I mean, if it's about legal numbers, illegal, whatever you want to talk about, you know, they were in power for most of that time. And towards the end, they'd started to get a little stricter on things like visas,
the salary thresholds and so forth.
Salary, all the rest of it. That could mean in a week's time, or just over a week's time, that the latest data will look quite good in comparison to that heady figure of 906,000 a couple of years ago. Naturally, Starmer will take the he'll take the glory on that one, but it won't really be down to him, surely.
No, it would be down to the measures that actually were introduced by James Cleverly, the last Conservative Home Secretary. He will of course take. He would have been the person who introduced the measures, particularly around salary thresholds, basically putting up the salary thresholds that you have to meet in order to get a visa to work in this country. Those and also removing the ability to bring a spouse or dependent into this country. And that those 2 measures were designed fundamentally to make this country less appealing to people who wanted to come and work here and gain a visa to work in, whether it be in social care or gain a more highly skilled visa as well. So that was the aim of the policy. But 300,000 is still a lot. Remember, David Cameron, when he was Prime Minister, his ambition was to reduce net migration to the tens of thousands. 300,000 for him, if I remember correctly, and I don't have the numbers going completely off the top of my head, but that would be high.
Of course.
It is since we left the European Union that actually, and Keir Starmer does have a point on this, that actually the numbers have spiralled out of control to that high of 900,000. That's a population that's pretty much going on for the size of Birmingham, as the PM said today. That's a huge number arriving in this country every year, and that's what the Prime Minister needs to tackle in order to see off the threat from Nigel Farage's reform.
Well, let's have a little listen then. Keir Starmer speaking a few hours ago on his immigration white paper. Here he is.
Now, make no mistake, this plan means migration will fall. That's a promise. But I want to be very clear on this. If we do need to take further steps, if we do need to do more to release pressure on housing and our public services, then mark my words, we will.
Is that brave to say it's a promise, or is he already privy to those numbers that are coming out a week on Thursday?
Well, I think he's not going to be able to claim credit, as we've just been discussing, for the numbers that come out in a couple of weeks' time, as to exactly how far net migration has fallen. But Keir Starmer, when he won't put a number on it, because of course the danger for putting a number, if they put a number on when it comes to immigration, the danger is that he's held to that. That becomes a rod with which to beat the Labour government with. We saw what happened when David Cameron promised to reduce net migration to the tens of thousands. He ultimately failed to do that, and that was one of the big reasons that we ended up with, one of the big reasons that Nigel Farage, in a previous guise as leader of the UKIP, UK Independence Party, was able to hammer home the point that we needed to leave the European Union in. So he doesn't want to fall into that trap. The other person to fall into the trap of making a promise was Rishi Sunak. He promised to stop the boats. Did he stop the boats? Well, actually, the numbers of boats came down quite substantially, from 45,000 down to 29,000 in his last year in government. But he didn't stop the boats.
No.
And I think what many of your listeners want, and I think many voters want in the country out there, is for a prime minister, or indeed any leading politician, to make a promise and to deliver on that promise. Yeah. And what Keir Starmer doesn't want to do is to make a promise that he can't keep. But that does lead him to being fairly evasive, because he's been asked repeatedly to detail exactly what is significant or what is a substantial drop in migration.
Dick, what does he mean by an island of strangers? He's talking about new measures, it's tougher English language test, 10 years before you can become a citizen, banning visas for foreign care workers, things like that. Yvette Cooper expanded on that as well. An island of strangers, is that because we see folk who look differently, or folk who don't have the same kind of commonality in terms of language and, I don't know, cultural assimilation?
I think what the Prime Minister is driving at is that when you have immigration on the levels that we have seen immigration in this country, it becomes very difficult for people to integrate. And one of the reasons, we know that language is a huge, could be a huge boost when it comes to a community integrating. If everybody can speak the same language, you don't end up with street signs or signs in public buildings where you're using a different language. Everybody is forced to to speak English and to understand English, and that's part of the drive there. That's the first point towards integration. Yeah. And I think what Keir Starmer's and having listened to his speech, and he gave a 10-minute speech in that press conference, was driving at is that if you have immigration at the levels you are having, you can't bring people together. You're in a situation where, in towns and cities up and down, particularly in poorer parts of the country, I think there's a tendency in London and in the political classes or the establishment classes, the media classes, for people to look down their noses and say, well, immigration isn't a problem. If you're living in somewhere like Scunthorpe, or you're living in somewhere like Runcorn, and you see, and of course these are the places that the Home Office, in order to reduce the tax burden, these are where they're setting up these hotels, or buying up accommodation, or contractors are coming in and saying, well, we can provide accommodation for particularly those who have crossed the channel through irregular or illegal routes into this country. Those are the communities, Ian, that are bearing the brunt of this. Yeah. And for them, and many of your listeners will live in places like this, they will be looking at saying, well, actually, my outlook, my world has changed. And I think there's a tendency, and I think this actually, we were talking about, is it in Keir Starmer's gut? Is it in the gut of Labour MPs to actually take a stand on this particular issue, or actually do they feel the necessity for a change? There's a tendency just to sort of think, well, actually, this isn't something that we worry about, but I think out there in the country, many people are worried about it, and they have legitimate concerns about it. Spending £4 million a day, these are bills that are running into tens of billions of pounds, 100%. Ultimately, and you end up in a situation at the same time where the government is cutting the winter fuel allowance, and that's a toxic mix.
It's horrendous.
That opens the door for reform and Nigel Farage.
Well, there's the question. Do you now trust Labour on this one? Have they scuppered reform? Is reform now dead and buried as a result of Keir Starmer's incredible moment? We've seen those great speakers over the years, whether it's Winston Churchill or Martin Luther King, and today a third one pitched up, Keir Starmer. I jest, obviously. He made a bit of a speech. It was a bit half-hearted. But do you now trust Labour to sort out immigration? Some might say, actually, it's a good thing. They're in a pincer movement. They've got no choice. They have to sort out immigration. 0344 499 1000. Theo Ushwood is with us. Back with more coming next on Talk.
Yvette Cooper, Ed Balls, Tony Blair, all those people involved in that time and right through now have been a political party that have opposed criminals from being deported. They signed letters as a Labour Party to prevent people who had been boarded onto planes to be removed from this country who had been convicted of crimes. And now she has the audacity to repeat the same claim she once called racist and say that she will now remove people when her party has opposed it vehemently over the past 14 years.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
22 minutes after 1 o'clock, Theo Usherwood is with us. A lot to talk about, including this one, Theo. It seems we get one of these every single week at the moment. Police facing criticism for arresting a retired officer over a social media post which was warning of anti-Semitism during the pro-Palestinian protest. Let's have a listen to the man himself speaking more recently. This is Julian Folks on his experience with Kent Police.
If they think that they're quite safe and they can just sit at home and maybe just knock out a little tweet that, they think is a bit edgy or whatever, just be aware of the climate out there at the moment. And, it could be a knock on your door. And the officers that basically went through everything in my house, I think they went about it in the only way they could go about it, but I would still class them as being respectful. But when you've got people trampling through your home, it felt to me like probably how I would feel if my house was burgled, that my home and my castle had been violated.
Well, the bit I don't get about this, Theo, is... first it seems that the police got this wrong. They thought he'd said something anti-Semitic and he was actually attacking anti-Semitism. It was depending how you read the tweet. Somebody had written the words, "Dear Suella Braverman, as someone who was on the hate marches, in inverted commas, if you call me an anti-Semite, I will sue you." To which Mr. Fawkes replied, "One step away from storming Heathrow looking for Jewish arrivals." And I think the police read that thinking, oh, he's one step away from... Yeah. But actually, he was... it's quite obvious, really. He was attacking the previous tweet.
Yeah. Do you know what I think... Do you know what I think's done for him? I think it's AI. I think the computer... The statement that I think is... And that's not to excuse what the police have done, but I think the statement that's done it is this idea of storming Heathrow. And that's set off an alarm bell somewhere. That then has been passed on to, because that's potentially like a, you could, if you're talking about storming an airport, that's potentially like a terrorism offence, right? That's really serious.
Of course.
And I think that's because I was discussing this with a friend who knows quite a lot about these matters, and that was what they picked out, was that phrase storming Heathrow. And I think Kent Police, rather than thinking, let's just use some common sense here, they don't listen to talk radio enough, rather than just use some common sense and actually just like put two and two together around what he's saying and what he's meaning and who this guy is. They don't do that nowadays. They just wade in there with their size 10s, troop round the house. And of course, what I think is just so... It's not like there are no other crimes out there to investigate. They've got into this guy's home. You've seen the footage. They've gone through all of his personal effects. They haven't ransacked the home from what you're seeing in the footage there, but it's still invasive.
It's a bit weird as well that you could. How does?
What are they looking for? I mean,
if you broke in to somebody's shed or something, and then they found out who you were and they went round your house, they probably wouldn't search your house.
And no.
Unless they got a warrant thinking there's stolen goods in there.
And there's like, there's the police, by and large, right? The police use their, how often do we deal with the police? And the police, sometimes I get pulled over. I got pulled over the other day for something that was, something was broken. One of the wing mirrors was broken on my car. And like I said to the police officer, I'm really sorry. I'm going to go and get it fixed. I know it's been waiting too long. Please don't write me a ticket. I'll go and get it done tomorrow. And the police officer looks, I'm not some sort of, let's use common sense. Okay,
Yes.
Get your wing mirror fixed. You need your wing mirror.
Yeah.
Get it fixed ASAP. And for me, you know, he knew that was enough to tell me to go and get my wing mirror fixed, and I was going to get it fixed. But the point.
Can I just say, in terms of accuracy, Theo Ash will be appearing at Southwark Crown Court on the 89th of August.
But what I don't understand is when the police arrived at his doorstep, right? They knock on the door.
Yeah.
Like, what's stopping a sergeant just going, look, okay,
this is ridiculous.
A bit silly. It's a bit silly, isn't it?
Did they not look at the...
Just look at the bloke.
Look at the bloke. And he's a former copper
He's
as well.
a former copper. Just look at the bloke.
He did 10 years with Kent Police. But the fact, as you rightly say, and it does seem correct, the word storming Heathrow has flagged up. But did nobody go, oh, hang on, no, he's replying to somebody... Clearly, and if we look at his other tweets...
AI is... there are faults with artificial intelligence.
Well, that's true, but at some point a human must have jumped in on it.
And just saying, no, he's replying. But all I think, at the moment, all that AI does, or all that the computer system does... I mean, I'm calling it AI, it might just be a program, right? But all it does is, like, storming Heathrow. They will pick that phrase out,
who's this man?
Flag it up, and then you know, it's like, you know, ringing the bank. What does the computer say I must do now? Or ringing 111. You know, that's the system that these things operate. Now, the system says he's storming Heathrow, you need to go and pay a visit. And I don't understand why, when the police officers turn up at the door, they go, sorry, I forget the gentleman's name. You know,
Julian Fawkes.
Mr. Fawkes, I'm very sorry. We're just investigating something about, and he could have just done the thing over a, you know, I'm really sorry, I got a bit frustrated with this thing and I just tweeted this thing, and that would be the end of it. But no, there needs to be like a full sweep of the house. And you know,
maybe they thought he was related to Guy Fawkes, and that's maybe where the problem started. I don't know. They also said in one of the searches around his house, they found a Douglas Murray book, and one of the officers said, "Oh, looks a bit Brexity, this bookshelf."
I mean,
really? I mean, what does that even mean?
Like the police don't do themselves. What I'd like in a, you know, rather than just an apology when you get these stories, and these stories are increasingly common now.
Yeah.
What I would like to hear from the police, or when they issue a statement, is not just "I'm sorry," but actually, look, we're just going to look again at how this technology works, or we're going to look at how our decision-making processes work, and then we're going to try and make a better call in future. That's all that ultimately. You know, how can we make the system better so that when this, you know, and it's going to happen again, right? These stories are going to happen again, whether it's something, you know, and you know, so when somebody rings up and there was a story, it was down on the front on the Times, and somebody made a complaint about, you know, to the school, what, you know, the parental WhatsApp group, and
that's
they made
right,
a complaint to the head teacher, like. Just use your common sense and say, look, I'm really sorry, this just isn't one for us.
It's not one for us.
It's not one for us.
You know, you're all grown-ups over there at the governor's department and the school. Sort it out amongst yourselves. The old Bill turning up with 6 of us. You know. Just a final one here, Theo. We'll have to be slightly briefer on this one. The National Education Union campaigning against a court ruling backing trans women's rights to use women's toilets. They're not happy over there at the NEU. Let's remind ourselves, though, of that now famous Supreme Court ruling and what they said.
The unanimous decision of this court is that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex.
There it is. It was all quite clear, but the NEU have voted against the Supreme Court's gender ruling. Can you vote against a ruling?
Well, I think no, you can't. I mean, it's not. You know, the Supreme Court's crystal clear, right?
Yeah.
You get the feeling that they're just sort of like, and I'm not surprised at all. They're sort of grandstanding to make a point. The Supreme Court's the highest court in the land. You'd expect it to stand. The Equalities Watchdog is going to be publishing guidance in the summer. They've already published interim guidance. You've seen organisations like the FA, you know, reverse, you know, change policies as a result. You know, you would hope now that actually. Yeah, I mean, you can be in no doubt about what that ruling is from the Supreme Court, and it's just time for, you know, just to get in line.
It's crazy, and none of this needed to happen, of course, because this is not I've said this forever, even before it became trendy to talk about this. This is not an issue. It's not trans people. It's trans activists. That's the problem here. We never had this issue before. It was never raised. Nobody had to talk about it. The issue of bathrooms just solved itself. But suddenly, the whole kind of very hard part of a very hard left right-wing sort of contingent of that part of the spectrum came along and said, no, it's no good, you know, having surgery or dressing up and, you know, looking like a woman. Anyone can just say they're a woman and they should be treated as such. That's where it all went wrong.
Yeah, and it's really simple. You can go and you can have gender reassignment surgery. You can dress as a woman. This country affords you lots and lots of freedoms to do that, right? If you want to do it. And I've got no trick to pick. But if you're talking about a changing room, if you're talking about sport, if you're talking about toilets, you're right. There are limitations, and if you those spaces, being no mistake from that, how I feel, you feel, all of your listeners feel, those spaces are reserved for people who are biologically women.
It is literally,
the end.
It's literally as simple as that. There's nothing else to really add to that. That's just
and if you want to walk down the street in any other with a dress on or whatever, go for it, fill your boots. But those spaces are reserved. Yeah,
well, apparently the Supreme Court is just rammed full of horrible transphobes. That's the other thing online at the moment, which, you know, these are very intelligent people who know the law upside down, left and right, in the dark, in the light. You know, they know their stuff. They were interpreting the law and they made it crystal clear. Theo, thank you as ever. Theo Usherwood with us here on Talk. Thank you to him. We'll talk to Ian Duncan-Smith in a couple of moments. He will join us, former Conservative Party leader, on that question of do you now trust Labour to sort the immigration crisis? Our lines are open. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. Keir Starmer, launching a major crackdown on immigration, warning that Britain risks becoming an island of stranger. The PM's pledge to take back control of the borders, aiming to close a, quote, squalid chapter, end quote, in politics and the economy. His plans include longer waits for settlement, tougher language tests, a ban on new foreign care workers' visas. I think the Home Secretary has been speaking about that in more length, alongside measures to prevent criminals from blocking deportation with human rights laws. In a moment, we will get a different kind of view from Rivka Shaw in just a moment. But first, Ian Duncan-Smith, former leader of the Conservative Party. Ian, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Always nice to have you with us. The question we threw out at the beginning was, do you trust Labour to sort immigration now? What's your initial thoughts on that one? I think I can guess.
Well, I can't trust Labour because they voted against everything we wanted to do previously to tighten up. My government made previously mistakes. We got off after 2019 slowly. We introduced a problem, which was this a scheme that allowed points-based. Trouble was we didn't specify those that shouldn't be in and the limits, and bringing families in, these sort of things were mistakes. But in 23, the government finally brought forward a series of changes, which OBR and the ONS, Office of National Statistics, have both forecast would take out some 350,000 from the 900,000 that were coming in, reduce it by 350 to 400,000 as a starting point. There's more to be done. That meant things like cutting dependents for students, no dependents for care workers, raising the salary threshold to 38, which, by the way, the Labour government, as soon as they came in, suspended, and social care visas would have to have a sort of CQC regulated scheme. So there was more to be done. And, you know, I'm first to put the hands up and say we should have started that earlier had it not been for the mess we got in at the beginning after we did the Brexit bit, which was the points-based system without limitations. But there are other problems too that have to be sorted out here, which they're shying away from. They talk about cutting applications for people coming in for social care. The problem is right now is that we have an old, archaic social care system that is long overdue for reform. We're the only country in the world, I think, that runs it like this. It's a mess. Nobody quite knows who's responsible, whether it's the local authority half the time or whether it's the healthcare, the hospital. So discharges are very poor. They put pressure on hospitals, cutting off beds. And if they're reduced too early and they haven't got support in the community, and we've got these people running around 15-minute visits, harassed, very lowly trained, on very low salaries, and nothing they can do when they get there because they have no training if somebody has a problem. Yeah. And I've looked at the Barcelona system, the Canada system, and they have much higher trained people, fewer of them, many fewer of them, that's where they get their savings from, but they work on a system that monitors people in their own homes, and so when they think there's a problem, they can send somebody who's highly trained to deal with them. Other than that, they don't bother them if not necessary. And the result of that is it's A, it costs less, and is B, much more effective. And that reform would cut the need for so many low-paid workers. But what has the government done? They said, oh, we're going to have a social care a review. It won't come in until after the next election. Yes. And I think that is just pushing the buck.
I mean, it's extraordinary. When Boris Johnson was Prime Minister, of course, you will remember on the steps of Downing Street, his very first speech was, we will, I think he used the word, finally sort out this mess with social care. Nothing really happened, and nothing's happened since. And as you rightly just identified, it's been kicked into the long grass again for another almost half a decade.
Yeah, no, it's a mess. And it's the thing is, it's all very well to say we're going to reduce, but you've got to also get rid of the pull factor on these things. So these are legal migrants. We haven't got into the illegal migration yet. Yeah. But the legal migration is very doable, providing you have very clear, specific areas. I mean, the family side of things has been abused, without question. People are brought in families on the lowest of job specifications, and they've never left. And so the key issue here is to tighten up what the pull factor is. The pull factor is hugely low-paid jobs. And to be fair, it's not all to do with government. There's a lot of companies out there that want to bring in much cheaper labour, saves them having to train up British citizens as well. Yeah. And I ran training courses, for example, heavy goods vehicle drivers. I trained as one when I left the army as an HGV driver. The main thing is those take about 3 weeks to do, and you have a job for life. Yep. But the British companies, we were told, were not training British people with driver's license who want to do the job because they could get it cheaper by bringing them in without having to pay for the training. All that short-termism has also led to this demand going up. So we need to crack down on what is the pull factors as much as saying, so Labour's trying to take credit for what was already in the pipeline, which is over 300,000.
And I was about to say, I mean, the figures to June 2023, 906,000. We remember that extraordinary jaw-dropping moment when we saw those numbers. In the year to June 2024, as you rightly said, down to 728,000. A week on Thursday, we will get the latest data. There is a suggestion it could be down to as low as about 320,000. Now, of course...
Well, the forecast is 350.
So 350, there we are. So that would suggest that whatever the Conservatives were doing was working, although I would imagine Mr Starmer will probably hoover up the credit for that one.
Well, he can't take the credit for that because this is the first decision he's made, and we think the most it will probably add to the reduction will be anything up to between 20 and 50,000 to the reduction that was already planned. The hundreds of thousands that are going to come off, legal migration is coming down after the changes we made 2 years ago. It takes time for those to take effect, as you know. Of course, sadly, we had an election last year, weren't able to trumpet those changes. I'm not squirming. We should have done this before. But having done that, that's on its way down. Yep. The big focus now is how far are you prepared to go, the government, on illegal migration, which is the booming area that we see. Are you prepared to deal with our problems with the Court of Human Rights and the way that they keep overturning those judgments to send them away and overturn acts of Parliament? We've got to deal with this, and this is the question that's hardest for Labour, because all of them are very pro the convention and the way it's been working.
Well, indeed, and there is no... I don't know whether the fuller detail of the white paper will include a reference to channel migration, but certainly there was no reference of that today.
No, and that's the point. Because what they're doing, I think, Labour, yes, they've tightened up a bit further, and some of those I would support. But the reality is the effect of that will be very small relative to the amount that it's coming down by. Yeah. So by picking on this, they know very well what's happening to legal migration is it is tumbling right now because of the changes made. And if they make more, that will help it go down further. But that will be very significantly lower, as you said, 320, 350,000, and still falling. So the key question is, the big rising area, the big problem area, has become illegal migration. And there you are, head-to-head with the courts and with the Convention of Human Rights. And what do we do about that? Because every time we come up with a programme, at every stage, that's overturned. And I notice the government talks about breaking the gangs. You know, honestly, breaking the gangs is a great idea, except for one thing. If you break one gang, another one will spring up tomorrow, because the pull factor is there. They know... If they pay a lot of money, these people, to go on these boats, terrible. Many of them die in the channel, but when they get over here, the pull is that they stay here. And there's no way of getting them back at the moment. And the answer to that is you've got to deal with that bit. Take out the pull factor, the gangs will collapse themselves.
He did, or the Home Secretary certainly spoke, just a final point, Ian Duncan-Smith, that spoke of not allowing crazy human rights laws to stand in the way of this. But I don't...
Well, that's waffle.
Well, I was about to say, I don't know what Yvette Cooper or Mr Starmer's workaround could be, then.
Well, the only thing you can do is, at the moment, it's directly linked to the courts. So that means the courts don't have to listen to the government, because it's supreme. That Human Rights Act that came in, which gave them direct reference to the convention, means that they themselves can use that to overturn acts of government which they say are not in compliance with the Human Rights Act, or laws that they don't believe therefore have to be respected. So the question really is, if you elect a government, that government then is stymied by the courts. So here's the question for the government right now. Are you prepared, when you make a statement like, we won't let them, what does that mean? Are you going to come out of the convention, disapply the Human Rights Act and its reference to Europe? All these things are big decisions to be taken. I have to tell you, getting into that will be the toughest area, not adding to an already existing big reduction that's coming through over the last year and this year.
Indeed. Well, we will watch with interest, and maybe the popcorn as well. Ian, thank you for your time as ever. Ian Duncan-Smith, former Conservative Party leader, of course, done a lot of work in this area. That was his fairly measured view. You might agree or disagree. Thoughts on that? Do you now trust Labour to sort this thing out? 03444991000. Let's get a word from Rivka Shaw, Policy Officer at the Greater Manchester Immigration Aid Unit. Rivka, good afternoon to you.
Hi, Ian.
Nice to have you with us. I mean, did you find yourself at any point there, curiously and against all your instincts, thinking, well, there's a bit of Ian Duncan-Smith I actually agreed with there?
Well, I think I agree with Ian Duncan-Smith that we need to be asking questions of Keir Starmer. We need to be asking, does Keir Starmer really want to make our communities stronger? Or is he happy to throw them under the bus for the sake of a number to point at an arbitrary immigration figure? So that's why I was disappointed today to see some really kind of reckless policy making that fails to address what our communities really need. Things like better housing, better funding for our NHS, and to set those things up as an opposition to migration, as opposed to just admitting what we know, which is that migration is good for the economy and that we need migration for our communities to thrive.
Is the problem, I've often wondered about this, because we've had as a country a pretty good track record of helping people who've escaped tyranny or horrendous places, everything from a Blue Peter appeal to Red Nose Day. We've thrown money into the pot, as it were. But is the problem here with the word migration? Because it covers so much, doesn't it? It's such a, you know, if somebody's coming over here, I can't ever remember a time in my lifetime, I'm clearly, I would imagine, a bit older than you, so I think I would speak for both of us on this and almost everyone, where I didn't see foreign workers in the NHS, for example. I don't know an NHS that didn't have, my mum's breast cancer surgeon was from Nigeria, my dad's surgeon was from Pakistan. You know, all of that. That's always been the case, and I don't think anyone's primarily got an issue with that. So it's clearly elsewhere that there's problems, right? And the care sector was one area that I think Yvette Cooper as well as Keir Starmer picked up on.
Well, that's interesting, Ian, because the kind of thing Keir Starmer's been saying today would make you think that everyone has a big problem with the fact that the NHS is reliant on migrant workers who do brilliant things. And I don't see why it's so different, a breast cancer surgeon being from another country than a care worker looking after our elderly friends and relatives. But I agree that that net migration figure covers so much. It's an aggregate that tells us very little on its own. So it covers people coming to the UK to work in social care or as business people, scientists, doctors. Students coming to the UK, propping up our universities with their international fees and finding careers afterwards. And also a small number, as you mentioned earlier, of people seeking safety on our shores. So yes, if you cut the number of visas issued, you can bring that number down. And the result for the government would be just that, a lower number to point at. But as for credible plans to fill over 100,000 vacancies in the care sector, as to credible plans
I mean, look,
any number of issues,
you're
I'm
right.
still listening.
You're absolutely spot on. I thought the point that Ian Duncan-Smith made was reasonable. The whole social care system, I mean, this is a whole other subject, needs completely recalibrating and sorting out. It is pitiful. It's woeful. It is not fair on anybody, the people that work within it. I think his point was that, you know, it could work. If we got it right in this country, you wouldn't need to employ people from elsewhere just by dint of numbers, because we'd have a more efficient system. But at the moment, we don't have a more efficient system, so you're always going to be reliant on people from elsewhere.
I think the measure of us as a country is not how many people we can shut out. We all want to see a strong economy. We want to see more stability in sectors.
But it's also not, sorry to interject, it's also not how many people we bring in, is it? That's not also a measure.
But I think how we treat people who are here...
No, that's fair enough. But we don't say, oh, aren't we a good country because 300,000 more people are here? That in itself is not a positive. It's who those people might be, what they're doing and why they're here, right? That's fair.
Certainly, I'm not saying anything of the sort, but I am thinking about the people that I work with at Greater Manchester Immigration Aid Unit. I'm thinking of our colleagues, our friends, our neighbours, who we know and we see are already really struggling to get that settlement in the UK that the government is now making it harder to achieve. So none of us want to see our colleagues, our friends, our neighbours struggling for years, getting into debt just to keep their lawful status, keep their right to rent, to work, in order to keep living and working here and contributing to our communities.
Do you see, when you hear the word immigration, just a final point, Rivka, is there anything, even though obviously you speak from a perspective, that's the world you work and function within, I get that, you know, we're a democracy, for goodness sake, people can have all sorts of opinions, and it's fabulous that we can, you know, isn't that a lovely freedom to have, etc. However, do you see any issue with immigration? Do you have a belief that there is nothing to see here when you hear the word immigration?
Far from it. I have an awful lot to say about immigration and an awful lot that I would love to see change. And one of the first things I would like to see is safe routes introduced so that you don't have to worry about those small boats so much. And I'd love to see shorter routes of settlement and cheaper routes of settlement so that people aren't kept in limbo with the Home Office making massive profits off their visa fees for 10 years. That's the opposite of what I want to see. So I'm disappointed in what the government is saying today. OK, listen, Rivka, lovely to have you on with us. Thank you for your time. Rivka Shaw, Policy Officer at the Greater Manchester Immigration Aid Unit, clearly, by definition of what she does, has a slightly different perspective than Ian Duncan-Smith and others. However, the point is still live. Care workers is a really interesting point on this, isn't it? I mean, who do you get working in the care sector? I do sense that Rivka is probably of a belief that it's, you know, let's bring as many people as you want over to this country. That's fine. If somebody's working, that's a whole different ballgame. When we talk about immigration, which is why I sort of slightly went down that path about what do we mean by immigration, that's the curious bit. That's the bit, isn't it? Yeah, a breast cancer surgeon, bring it on. I don't care whether they're from Pakistan, Australia, Nigeria or anywhere, frankly, as long as they're a qualified surgeon.
Brilliant. But when we know we're not talking about that, we're not talking about, when we talk about cultural assimilation, that's not what we're talking about. Lines are open. Have Labour finally got it? Has the penny finally dropped over there at Labour HQ? Do you trust Keir Starmer, Yvette Cooper, to sort out the immigration crisis? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Nigel realises he don't want career politicians in his party. He doesn't want these waste of time, people that have just got no career or no business mind behind. He wants real people that know what they're talking about in business, and obviously someone that can get behind them on apprenticeships. I mean, apprentices are the future, James.
What really is at the back of the minds of some of these lefty layabouts is if you do a job with your hands, then you are working and in some way perhaps more important, but they don't mean it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Let's go to your calls. This is Tony, West Sussex. How you doing, Tony?
Oh, I'm doing terrific. Just want to mention a couple of things, Ian.
Yeah.
Before the election, Mr. Starmer said there would be no increase in council tax when Labour got in.
Do you remember that? Yeah, no increase in council tax.
He said it
no
4
take.
or 5 times.
Oh,
Lanny
many more,
said
and
it,
others
Reid
did as
said
well.
It, Rayner said it.
Yep.
Yeah. What happened as soon as we got in? Council tax went up.
Yeah.
Prior to the election, he never mentioned one little word about pensioners' heating fuel allowance. Not one word.
Yes.
Not being in power 4 weeks, I'm taking that away. So do you really expect me as an intelligent human being to believe today that I am going to stop immigration, reduce immigration? He isn't. He is a commensurate liar. And I think most of this country know he's a liar.
Do you think, though?
Listen, mate, if he told me today was Monday, I'd get a second opinion.
Yeah, I don't blame you for that. Do you think, however, though, Tony, that we're in a slightly different place in that he now knows if he doesn't address this, he's absolute toast in 2020?
Look, it's like saying to a leopard, don't eat beef, it's bad for you. Don't kill the cow, it's bad for you. He'll go, yeah, I won't touch it, then I won't touch it. And as soon as you're around the corner and gone, he kills another cow and he eats the beef. That is Starmer.
He can't help himself.
He can't help himself.
Yeah.
And the majority of the people, common sense is what you go on about all the time, which is quite correct. The common sense people are listening to him going, you are absolutely joking. Please go away.
So not a single part of you, Tony, thinks he's going to sort this thing out.
I told you, if he told me today was Monday, I'd say, excuse me, could you tell me what day it is? The Prime Minister just told me and I don't believe it.
Yeah, that's it. We've got to that place, and we got there quite quickly, didn't we, as well?
We have.
So.
We have. It's a great show, my friend.
Thank you, Tony. Great call as well. Really appreciate that. This comes in from Gary, who says, this is clearly Keir Starmer's attempt to satisfy the Reform voters, but without going into any detail about the illegals and the numbers, it's obviously all smoke and mirrors. All he's done is upset the last of the Labour supporters. They have left and pushed more towards the Lib Dems and the Greens, says Gary. Yeah, fair point as well. Mike's in Lancashire. What do you think, Mike? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. How are you?
I'm as good as gold at this end, thank you. What are your thoughts?
Lovely sunny day in Lancashire.
It's an absolute beauty, isn't it?
I tell you what, Ian, I was looking at Starmer's speech before.
Yeah. It's good, wasn't it?
Never, in all my life, I am 67, I have seen Prime Ministers come and go. I have never, ever seen such a two-faced liar, hypocrite. Does he really think we're stupid, the voting public?
Yes.
To do all that, you know,
well, it's the only answer I can think is, given that he's never in his political career gone down this route, we've got plenty of evidence of what all his front bench have previously said about immigration, so why would we believe him now?
Well, exactly, Ian. You know, I mean, everything I mean, I'm a Reform voter now. I used to be Tory all my life, but I'm Reform now. You know, he voted against everything what the Tories tried to do to curb immigration and everything.
Yeah.
And now he's come across as this, oh, you know, the saviour. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do the other. We're not idiots, Ian.
You're not buying it?
No, not at all, not one iota.
Yeah. And there is, but this idea that maybe, I mean, I'm just giving him a tiny bit of benefit of the doubt here. Well, not even that really, Tony. I'm wondering whether he thinks, actually, I haven't got a choice now. I've got to do this, because if I don't, I'm dead.
He's got to do it, Ian, because he's on the run for reform. He's got to do something. He's going now against every one of his principles before he got into power.
Yeah.
He's betraying everything that he ever said, just because he's absolutely terrified of reform.
Yeah. Well, he is, and so are the Conservatives as well.
Exactly, Ian. I was Conservative all my life, and I am now a fully paid up member of Reform, because the Conservatives have got nothing. I mean, I thought Kemi was going to be like a breath of fresh air. She was going to do something.
She might. But you're right. It has felt a little bit damp, hasn't it? Around the Conservatives. There's no real sense of, wow, there's some fireworks here. They've got a big box of them, and they're all about to go up Keir Starmer's left trouser leg. But at the moment, we haven't seen it. Listen, Tony, I've got to move. Mike, for no other reason than time. Thank you, Mike in Lancashire. This came in from Fern in Glasgow. It says, the elderly in this country have been abandoned. If you don't have family around you, you have no chance. The governments are using their failure of our systems as an excuse to justify the influx of migrants. They can't control either. It's a big lie. Keir Starmer bubbles from a drowning man, says Graham. Fair point too. And Malcolm says, trust me, this is Starmer. Is that like trusting him that he wouldn't touch pensioners' winter fuel allowance? Or the farmers? You won't pay one penny more in council tax. The man's a liar. I will never believe anything he says, says Bev in Hampshire. Thank you, Bev, for that. And previous caller picking up on exactly that point. But do you trust him on this? Do you trust Keir Starmer and Labour to finally sort out the problem of immigration? 0344 499 1000. Our lines are open. Back in a couple of moments. First, the news headlines at 2 o'clock.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Just coming up on 3 minutes after 2 o'clock. Welcome back to the Home of Common Sense. As you've been hearing, Britain risks becoming an island of strangers. That's the word of the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. He's warning this as he launches a major immigration crackdown, he says. Not sure about that. Vowing to take back control of the borders and close the book on what he called a squalid chapter in politics and the economy. Are you buying it? Do you believe him? Is this snake oil salesman territory? Or has Mr. Starmer turned a corner on this fundamental issue? Do you now trust him to sort the immigration crisis? We'll have more details on that. Also this afternoon, police have been told to focus on catching actual criminals after a retired constable was handcuffed by his former force over a social media post warning about the rise in anti-Semitism. They got it so horribly wrong here, and it completely went out of control rather quickly. He's been very forgiving, in fact. We'll have more on that too. And the head of the Prison Officers Union has called for US-style supermax conditions for Britain's most dangerous prisoners following an alleged attack on a guard by the Southport killer Axel Rudakabana. This is not the first, and it won't be the last at the moment. We'll talk to the head of that union a little later in the show. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk 0344 499 1000. On that point of the police, this was Kent Police arresting a man over what they'd assumed somehow, such a flipping mess this, they'd assumed it was an anti-Semitic tweet, and in fact it was the very opposite to that. He was attacking anti-Semitism. Nonetheless, he got nicked, he got cuffed. I don't know why he was handcuffed, by the way. It was all very calm. He took a, I think he got a verbal warning as well. And then that was taken away. They realised there'd been an error and said he should never have been given this warning. And he only took it because he was off to see his daughter, having lost one daughter in a tragic accident. His other daughter lives in Australia, and he didn't want to scupper his chances of his visa or any travel arrangements. So he took the warning, thinking this is my best option, because if I don't, it's all going to kick off and I'm going to end up in court and who knows what. So he took it, but then the police said, oh, actually, it's been a terrible error here. Very sorry, Mr. Fulks. We'll remove that. I don't know how it happened in the first place. Cliff says the arrest was designed to intimidate the public. He presented no threat to 6 young coppers, but they still cuffed him. They then left him in a cell for 8 hours. This is clearly like putting a child on the naughty step to think about what they've done. Police state, anyone? Says Cliff. I hear it. I go with the cock-up rather than anything else theory on these things. And whenever I talk to a police officer about these, and we've seen too many of these, of course, the couple with the WhatsApp group the other day, nearly everyone said, well, it wasn't our choice to go there. We were told that this was serious and we had to go and carry out this arrest. This was the inspector or whoever. I've never spoken to an individual officer who would believe this is a good use of their own resources. Let's get a word on the big stories of the day. Reem Ibrahim is back with us, Communications Manager at the Institute of Economic Affairs. Reem, good afternoon to you.
Hello, good afternoon.
What a day to have a chat. Finally, there was Nigel Farage and Reform riding high just a week or so ago at those local elections, that by-election, the mayoral elections, sweeping the board, the BAFTAs, if you like, of the midterms or those local elections. They did incredibly well. Turns out, Reem, it was all a waste of Nigel Farage's time, because along comes Keir Starmer and he solved the problem. Who knew? Young Keir, two-tier Keir. He's gone and sorted it. We have nothing to worry about.
It's so interesting, actually, the fact that these immigration announcements have come so immediately soon after Reform UK's resounding victory.
Reem. It's a
all a
coincidence.
coincidence. I'm sure these plans were in the works long before then. But what's interesting is that a lot of it seems to be tackling legal migration. So A lot of it is actually looking at things like adult social care, in which people are able to gain visas for particular jobs. I think what's interesting about this is that it seems to slightly misunderstand the fact that the reason why so many people are able to come to the UK and are able to then claim asylum and are able to come here illegally, a lot of the immigration that people are upset about are the people that aren't working. It's the people that are burdens on the taxpayers. At least from my perspective, I have absolutely no problem with people coming here to work, but the problem is a lot of people are coming here and not working. I remember I saw a really interesting video from Sky News the other day where this woman who had come here, she was migrant, she was complaining about the housing that the council had put her in, and her and her 4 kids lived in I think it was about 2-bedroom apartment, and she was complaining about it. And she didn't work herself, although she seemed as though she would have been capable of working. So again, I think that's the migration that people are upset by, not necessarily the people that are coming here legally and working.
Indeed, and as we speak, for those who are watching us as distinct from just listening, we were just seeing images there from Dover, the latest images that have come in. It's obviously been a beautiful weekend. Right across the country, really, but on the south coast, up there in the mid-20s, perfectly calm waters across the English Channel. And there we see hundreds of, average 23-year-old young men making their way into the arms of the Dover officials.
Exactly.
And this is a daily thing right now.
It is, and as you said, I mean, with the summer months, and as you can see in those videos, in the summer months, it's a lot easier for people to come to the UK on a boat because it's a lot safer, the waters are calmer. Look, I mean, this is absolutely outrageous, and again, people aren't going to stop coming here unless we cut off the very reason that they come, and that is the huge numbers of benefits and support that they receive when they get here. Fundamentally, what I would like to see from the Prime Minister and what I would personally like to see from the government is a genuine upholding of the rule of law. If you enter this country illegally, you should be deported. That should be the end of the conversation. Fundamentally, you are not claiming asylum. You are not risking your life as a result of moving from France over to the UK. If you are genuinely fearful of your life, you would remain in the country that you're in. These people are economic migrants. Now, again, I actually am quite pro-migration. I think that people that want to come here and work, that's great, but do so legally through the legal routes that are available to you. I think as soon as you come here illegally, you should not be here. Now, to be fair to the government, a lot of these conversations they're having today have to be separate from the human rights causes. I mean, the fact that we're part of the ECHR, the fact that we have human rights laws in the UK, mean that effectively it's very, very difficult to deport those people unless you have a reciprocal arrangement with those countries. Now, it worked quite well with Albania, because the Albanian government were nice enough to want to have a reciprocal arrangement with the UK. But unless we have that, it probably does violate a lot of our human rights laws if we were to just deport people that come here illegally. I would like to see that happen, and so I think we need to revisit a lot of those laws.
And what's interesting is, as you said, none of the illegal stuff was even mentioned today. Whether it comes in the white paper at some point, who knows. On the legal stuff itself, there's an almighty bit of luck that might fall into the Prime Minister's lap in about 2 weeks' time, or a week on Thursday, when the latest net migration figures come out. As we know, a couple of years ago, they stood at the jaw-dropping 906,000. It did drop by June 2024 to 728. Suggestion that a week on Thursday it'll be about 350,000. Now, this would be due, one would reasonably assume, to visa controls and dependency controls that the previous government introduced, but it certainly won't stop Keir Starmer go, look, I did it. It's working already, even though he's only been in the job for half an hour.
Yes, that's right. And it's very important that we're aware of which policies and where they've actually come from and what the results of them actually are. Again, I think when it comes to this legal migration problem, a lot of people that are upset about migration are upset about the fact that there are huge numbers of people, often illegal, often asylum seekers, so not technically illegal, people that are in one particular area. They're in hotels that are taxpayer funded. We saw the story over the weekend that a lot of the people that own those hotels are actually getting quite a good deal from the taxpayer. They're getting quite a lot of money. That's what people are upset about. Now, we'll see these legal migration numbers come down. You're absolutely right. Starmer and the government will probably look at this and say, well, look, our plan is working. People are afraid. People aren't coming here as a result. But these are legal numbers. And so in terms of how people feel, do people feel as though migration is coming down? Do people feel as though those illegal people aren't here anymore? That isn't the case. And so whilst they can look at those numbers, I don't think necessarily the people that are actually suffering as a result of this kind of mass migration, I don't think will actually feel any better.
Yeah. We are going to come back to that question as well. Do you now trust Labour to sort the immigration crisis? 0344 499 1000. Reem Ibrahim is with us on the programme. Let's have a word on the Lindsay Hoyle. So Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker of the House of Commons. It's a great gig, the Speaker. Anyone who's ever watched one of those documentaries behind the scenes, you literally live in a palace for, for the period of time you're in. It's absolutely beautiful. The behind-the-scenes stuff that you don't see, there's often big banquets. You know, when those world leaders come over, they often have a little meal with the Speaker as well. Never talked about, never filmed. You're in a very privileged position, and you've got to know your stuff, and I don't dispute at any level Lindsay Hoyle knows his stuff. He also knows what a freebie looks like as well. All legit, I should say, because he's kept nearly 300 of them over the last 4 years, including alcohol, ties, hampers, treats for his cats. I mean, what is wrong with the man? I mean, it might be legit, but would you not, if you were in that position, wouldn't you just say, we don't keep anything? Would that not be the best policy?
It probably would be. What is also interesting, we should also add, is that he has voluntarily given up this information. This is not all of that information has to be public, but they've voluntarily decided to register all of those gifts, which is, I think, definitely the right thing to do. I mean, so Lindsay Hoyle, I think, has been very good when it comes to procedure. Of course, he would be as the Speaker of the House of Commons. But you're absolutely right. I mean, I think most people sitting at home watching this and realising the genuine, outrageous privilege that these politicians have. I mean, the fact of the matter is, as a Member of Parliament, you are gifted loads of things. You are genuinely told that there are certain things that you're able to keep, and you don't have to declare it if it's worth less than £300. I think about £300. So what's interesting is that it does really reveal the absolute lavish nature of a lot of what these members of Parliament get. And I think what we have to be very clear about is any member of Parliament that claims that they are hard done by, that the £80,000 or £90,000 now that members of Parliament get as a salary, that's not all the benefits that they receive when they're in office.
Indeed, and I get it. Look, if you're doing if you've got a head of state who comes over, right, the Prime Minister of Australia pitches up and says, oh, Mr. Speaker, here's a duck-billed platypus we'd like to present to you. You know, I doubt whether you're just going to go, Get out of here with your filthy platypus. We don't want any of that. You're going to accept it at that moment, aren't you? Right? You're going to say, you know, I'd rather have had a frilled lizard, but that's another story. You'll accept it. But, of course, afterwards, wouldn't you say there's a policy that, you know, if you're the Speaker, you just simply gift the gifts to either a charity or someone else?
Yeah, so that's the difference. So he's chosen to keep a lot of these gifts himself rather than hand it over to, or accept it as a gift for the office of the House of the Speaker. So it could have been accepted just for the office rather than him personally. Yeah. I think what's interesting, look, I mean, would any of us in those positions give all of those gifts up? I don't think so. I think what it does reveal is the problem with politicians themselves and the way in which the political system works. People are so easily bribed, and it might not be what you think it is, right? It's not huge amounts of money for a campaign, but what it can be is a very expensive lunch here and there, or a couple of different gifts, a bottle of wine, a bottle of whiskey. Yeah. And as long as and you know, these are all gifts that have been declared, but with all members of Parliament, anything that's below 300, I think it's £300, yes, they don't have to be declared at all. So I think that there is a conversation to be had about the lavish nature of the office of being a Member of Parliament. Yeah,
I wouldn't give up my platypus. I have to say, I would have me dingo, but I'm keeping the platypus. Listen, and this story as well, Reem, NHS nurses could go on strike over a 25% erosion in pay. This is according to the Royal College of Nursing. They're talking about a 25% rise to counter what they call real-term losses. It seems to be the new sort of weapon of choice for all unions to talk about the real term. You know, if something hasn't increased particularly, you know, with the rate of everything else, then somehow that's a wage. I mean, you could play that game all the time, couldn't you? No one ever said, there's no law of life, you know, even Socrates didn't talk about it, that, you know, every time something goes up, your wages always have to go up to match it. Mine certainly haven't done that, so I don't know why that's always seems to be used, but it's a very powerful bargaining tool, isn't it, as a union, because you can start off with this whacking figure of 25%.
It is, and of course this is in the context of bargaining. The thing with public sector pay is it has to be seen in the context of public sector spending. Every time there is a increase in the amount of money that a public sector worker earns, that is an increase in overall taxpayer spend. And that conversation has to happen. I mean, to demand 25% is a huge amounts of money. Now, all of us, I'm sure, would love inflation-busting pay rises and more money in order to pay for those goods. However, fundamentally, the money that the government have at the moment is incredibly restricted. We know that we're already paying the highest tax burden on record. I know that many people across the country are really feeling that squeeze as a result of the incredible high amounts of taxes that we're spending. And so it does feel almost quite ludicrous to see so many public sector workers trying to get their share of it. Now, we have to be clear about this. We don't necessarily know what a public sector worker is ever going to be worth, quote unquote, because a nurse or a doctor, their salary is not decided by supply and demand. It's not decided in a marketplace. It's not decided by how many people are qualified for that job or how many people there are available for it. It's decided by the government and ultimately by the taxpayer. And it means that that money is restricted, and so they have to compete with every other government department. And I really do feel for so many public sector workers. I mean, of course, it's very difficult. We know the cost of living is incredibly high and we're all being squeezed huge amounts. However, that being said, we spend just below £200 billion a year on the National Health Service alone. I think that there is existing budgetary constraints that we can use to give those people pay rises, but 25% I think is completely out of the question.
Yeah, spot on. On that point, Reem, great to have you on with us again. We will speak very soon. That is Reem Ibrahim. She is Communications Manager at the Institute of Economic Affairs. Lots of comment on Keir Starmer. Chris says, useless. So useless. Couldn't do a round of toast without a focus group and a new quango to tell him how to do it without offending. One in from Margaret. Same waffle, same lies from two-tier Keir. He has no deterrent to stop the boats. Just keeps promising freebies and rolling out the red carpet, says Margaret in Birmingham. Well, it's a fair point, isn't it? I mean, this is the perception. I don't think we've ever... I know I keep hearing people go, well, we're not even a year into this government. They've got another 4 potentially after that. A lot could happen in that time. You know, other parties could start to crumble for reasons we can't right now imagine, but that's how life works. And they could really hammer home with a great set of books in 2 years' time. If the economy is growing, if immigration does come down, will people go, actually, do you know what? It's all right. It's not perfect, but who is going to be perfect? That's what they're banking on. The events, dear boy, events will be their saviour, because it's certainly not going to be their brilliance, their political ideology or their great acumen or decision making. It's not going to be any of that stuff because they haven't got any of that. And when it comes to immigration, it's sort of embarrassing hearing the embarrassing uncle or a head teacher try to tell jokes. It's kind of in that cringe department, hearing Keir Starmer try to sound animated and serious about immigration. It's never going to wash, really. But he gave it a go. So do you now trust... I'm bound to ask the question, do you now trust Labour to sort the crisis? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Nigel realises he don't want career politicians in his party. He doesn't want these waste of time, you know, people that have just got no career or no business mind behind. He wants real people that know what they're talking about in business, and obviously someone that can get behind them on apprenticeships. I mean, apprentices are the future, James.
What really is at the back of the minds of some of these lefty layabouts is if you do a job with your hands, then you are working and in some way perhaps more important, but they don't mean it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
One here comes in from Carl in Derbyshire. Says, Ian, everyone doubted whether reform could lay a glove on the political establishment of this country, but even if they never got another Prime Minister, another MP in Parliament, their sheer presence has radically changed the policy of Her Majesty's government, supposedly in its honeymoon period. The next 4 years are going to be interesting. It's a brilliant point from Carl. It's absolutely bang on. Who would have ever thought that a party with 5 MPs would be able to substantially alter the direction of the government of the day, who have a landslide in terms of numbers and 4 years left to go? You couldn't have written that. We'll have more comment from you. Let's go to Claire in the Wirral. How are you doing, Claire?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks, Ian. Good to talk.
And you too. Fire away.
Well, I mean, I don't really think this government has turned, is changing its course. It's frightened of what's happened with reform, and it's making noises.
Yeah.
I mean, Keir Starmer, I call him Fear Starmer because he's very scary. He's a very scary man. And Starmer has lied about everything. He's lied about the farmers' inheritance, for the pensioners, the cold water weather payments, the tax increases, council tax rises, energy prices, going down, and the migration. Well, that's just word soup, tackling the gangs.
Yeah.
He's a globalist. He doesn't want borders. He's quite happy with the migrants coming in, actually. I mean, I know this isn't we're talking about more the legal migration, but it's going through from what the Tories were doing, beforehand, what is happening, really. He's just jumping on the bandwagon, and it's happened at a particularly good time for him,
Sure.
But I know when you were talking to a previous caller, and he said, well, that basically Starmer's betrayed, their kind of policies on immigration. But he hasn't. It's just lies. Nothing's going to change. And we've got so many people coming here, they've got their housing all sorted out for themselves and everything. Do we really need, this legal routes for migration? What are we going to do with the ones that are already here?
Well, there's a massive problem, and the previous the Tories were awful at this as well, Claire, as I'm sure you know. They allowed this to grow. They didn't process anyone, because if they didn't process anyone, they didn't have to give any figures of how many people had been processed. So they were a bit rubbish on it. In fact, very. And now this lot have come in, but they've suddenly realised we've got the kind of the shadow of Nigel Farage looming over us. We've got to do something about it.
But I don't think they will. Like I say, they've said they're going to do something about everything. Where are our lower energy?
Yeah.
What's happened with the pensioners?
Pensioners, farmers, lower energy. I mean, the miserable list goes on. Listen, yeah, you're spot on. And I hear it. I can hear it in your voice, Claire. I think you represent a massive chunk of the British public. Thank you, Claire, in the Wirral. David is in Birmingham. David, good afternoon. What have you got for us?
Good afternoon, Ian. Yeah, I just can't believe how disparaging you were and the government are about carers. I think you said earlier that you weren't particularly bothered which country people came from to potentially operate on your parents, but you seem to be hung up about where the aftercare comes from. If we've got...
It's a statement on qualified, skilled, low skilled, and low isn't a pejorative, by the way, it's not an insult, but if you're a surgeon, I think your skill set is probably quite greater than a care worker. I could apply to be a care worker tomorrow. I might fail the training course, all 48 hours of it, but, you know, I'd give it a go.
Your people might have got into hospital because there's such a backlog at the end because there aren't any carers.
100%,
So,
yeah. I agree with you.
Yeah. And
why are there no carers?
Pardon?
Why are there no carers?
Because they're not treated properly, they're not paid properly.
Correct.
Disparaged.
Yeah. I mean, Ian Duncan Smith made that point.
You've just classified them as low skilled.
Well, in comparison to a surgeon, yes.
Yeah, but in comparison to a surgeon, you're probably low skilled, aren't you?
But I'm not in the care sector.
No, but all I'm saying.
But I could become a care worker. I couldn't become a surgeon.
I doubt it with your attitude, but...
Well, I don't know what attitude you picked up. I mean, I've been a carer, if that helps, but not one that I got paid for.
No. But all I'm saying really is if there's a gap of 110,000 at the moment...
There is, yeah.
People are stopping... You're stopping other people coming in to do the job.
Who's stopping?
You can't force other people to be carers.
Well, I'm not stopping. This is the government policy.
Yeah, OK, the government policy then.
Yeah.
The government policy is stopping other people coming in to be carers.
Yep.
Where are all those carers going to come from?
I 100% agree. I 100% agree. You can't make somebody... You can't make somebody become a care worker. In fact, we don't want care workers who are forced to become care workers, right?
Yeah. But that's why, all I'm saying is basically the system is broken because if people can't get out at the end of their treatments, the people can't get in at the start.
And so does it need then, on a kind of different point, David, Ian Duncan Smith made this point, that the entire system needs rehauling?
Of course it does.
He talked about he said the Barcelona system and a different way of approaching social care.
Absolutely, yeah.
Good.
All I'm really saying is that I was a bit disappointed about your comments and the comments of politicians who seem to think that carers are very low skilled.
Well, of course, what they did there's a distinction between low skilled and someone who's brilliant at that. You can be brilliant and amazing and dedicated to your job. In terms of the raw qualifications required for it, they will always differ to something within the same sector, as in health. But I hear what you're saying, David.
You cannot. Basically, you cannot compare a brain surgeon to a carer.
No, we're talking about should we need in this country to bring over people who are care workers? And we shouldn't need to do that. And one of the reasons we do, as you say, the conditions are bad, the pay is bad, and the system is broken. And if it was fixed, we might not need to do that. That's really the only point. David, thank you. And the term low-skilled, it's unfortunate there's not another term for low-skilled because, I can't imagine doing the job of a care worker. I also can't imagine doing the job of somebody who works in Wetherspoons on a Friday evening, but that would also be described as a low-skilled job, or serving tables in McDonald's. All of those jobs require something. But in terms of the term low-skilled is an economic term rather than a social commentary, if that makes sense. 0344 499 1000. We'll have more calls on this and a few other bits and pieces we've thrown in as well. Thank you to Claire. Thank you to David. Back with you in a few moments. It's 2:30. This is Talk.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's just gone 2:30. Let's have a look at this story. This becomes, I suppose, almost more disturbing, as if it could get any more disturbing, bearing in mind the kind of stories we are talking about. But each time we hear another example, we are reminded of the extraordinary and dangerous job that prison officers do up and down the country. But Britain's most dangerous inmates should face a kind of US-style supermax conditions with no kettles or contact with others, according to the Police Officers Union chief. It comes amid a police probe after the Southport killer Axel Ruda-Cabana allegedly threw boiling water at a guard in Belmarsh prison. Of course, that comes just a matter of weeks after the Manchester Arena bomber's brother, Hashem Abidi, seriously injured 3 staff at another top security jail. And we all scratch our heads and go, well, hang on, how did you ever come into contact with, hot stuff, whether it's a kettle, whether it's a frying pan? I think in the case of the second attack, I think it was heated butter, which is as good as having oil thrown all over you. Let's speak with Mark Fairhurst, National Chairman of the Prison Officers Association. Regularly helps us out, naturally, with these kind of stories. Good afternoon to you, Mark. I don't know what has to happen next for someone to take some kind of action, but at the moment, your members are in a terrible position.
They are, and the statistics prove that violence against staff has peaked. It's now at a 10-year record high. Wow. 29 of my members each and every day are getting assaulted on duty. And this just shows the danger we're under on the front line for simply doing our job.
Yeah, and often with very little protection. I mean, the stab vest story is sort of gaining a bit of momentum, but, most of the time you walk around in a shirt the same as the one I'm wearing now, right?
That's right, and the majority of prisons, all they have is an extendable baton and some incapacitant spray. But there are other areas of the estate who have nothing at all. They just walk around in polo shirts or a white shirt. So things really do need to change. And that's why we're asking for stab-proof vests in high-risk areas, which we class as separation centres, close supervision centres and segregation units. And we want slash-proof vests in the entire estate if it's necessary. So we'll look at the jails that have got high violence levels, and we want slash-proof vests rolled out there as well. So I've called for Supermax, as you've just mentioned there, because now is the time for the handful of prisoners who pose such a significant risk to staff that they want to target staff and murder staff and carry on with their atrocities inside. We want them clamped down. We want Supermax based on the American model. Now's the time to do that.
And these, of course, are prisoners who usually haven't got anything to lose. They're, in the case of one, serving 55 years in jail, whatever. You don't really care what you do in those circumstances, I guess, because they're not going to extend your sentence. It would make no difference. Tell us about Supermax conditions and Supermax prisons, Mark. What broadly, I know you're across all of this, what sort of happens there? I mentioned a couple of examples, but what's the broad thrust of how those regimes work?
So as I say, we're talking about a handful of prisoners who pose a significant risk. The majority of prisoners are well behaved, have kettles in the cells, enjoy freedoms and privileges. Not got a problem with that. But based on America, you would get prisoners who are determined because of their ideology or because of their violence tendencies to commit atrocities and carry on targeting staff. What we would do is set up a special unit inside a high security prison, a separation centre being the ideal candidate, and you would be totally locked down. So every time you are unlocked and moved anywhere, you would be handcuffed, escorted by 3 staff. You would get your basic entitlements. You would be out for an hour a day on exercise. And then in your cell, you wouldn't have any possessions that you could fashion a weapon out of. So your cell would be very sparse. And now that is their choice. They choose to live their lives like this. They choose to serve their sentence by targeting staff and are determined to murder staff. And I want to avoid one of my colleagues getting murdered on duty. Now is the time to act. We need to go further with this handful of prisoners who are determined to commit atrocities. Enough is enough.
Yeah, and I think most people would echo that, but are the right people listening, Mark? The Justice Secretary, the Home Secretary, the Prime Minister, how aware are they of these issues? I know publicly they will talk about having sympathy and we will not allow this to happen. What are they doing?
Well, luckily enough, they've acted rapidly, so we're now considering stab-proof vests and slash-proof vests. We've already trialled the rollout of tasers in the high security estate. Hopefully that will be successful and we can get them locally for a response. So now we're looking at Supermax. Now, the government are hearing us, But, you know, the time for platitudes has well and truly passed. It's time for action now. And our jails are more violent. We're dealing with more and more people who are at a significant risk, not only to national security, but to my members on the front line. As you say, these are serving 40, 50-year sentences with absolutely nothing to lose. So now's the time to protect the staff who have to look after them.
Yeah. Spot on. I think most members of the public as well would very much echo what you guys are trying to do, and you are up against it for a number of reasons, and at the top of that list are issues and events such as this. Thank you, Mark, as ever, for being with us. Mark Fairhurst is the National Chairman of the Prison Officers Association. I don't think who would want to send prison officers who are ill-equipped. You're not wearing anything that's going to protect you. You haven't got a gun, you haven't got a taser, you've got a baton if you can get your hand onto it in time. Implements, stabbings, hot oil and kettles being thrown. I mean, how? And you think, yeah, do you know what? There must be a group of people. I mean, how this Southport killer is in contact with anything, frankly. I mean, I would struggle to give the green light that he should even have a bed to lay on, for goodness sake. But you've got your kettle and you've got hot water in your... I mean, how does that happen? You look, when you consider the brutality, not just of what this man had done, but the kind of person he was. I mean, prior to that, you know, he had an obsession with those high school shootings over in the States. These people, those responsible, were his heroes, etc. You haven't got to be a psychologist or a copper to go, do you know what? I think this is exactly the kind of person that might attack a prison officer. I just have a feeling he doesn't recognise authority, doesn't understand it. He made weird noises during his own sentencing, to the point that he had to be removed from his own sentencing. He carried out one of the most unholy and barbaric, sadistic attacks we have seen in crime history in this country, contemporarily speaking. And in all likelihood, this is a bloke that, given the opportunity, will probably do the same thing again at some point. And high security prisons and those that work with these prisoners are just not equipped. But why would you give him, Rudy Bacano, a kettle, for God's sake? I'd imagine he'd be lethal with anything, right? It is a tiny reminder, by the way, that on Friday, as part of our Talk Crime series in association with CrimeCon, that's the world's #1 event for true crime and mystery. It returns to London on the 7th and 8th of June. Google it, CrimeCon. Find out how you can get along and see what's happening. This Friday, we'll be chatting to two authors, Jonathan Levi and Dr. Emma French, authors of the up-and-coming book Inside Belmarsh. This is eye-opening stuff. We're loosely aware that, you know, if you're done for a terror attack, you're likely, certainly in the initial stages, to be put into Belmarsh. These are high-security jails. Belmarsh is among the most in that respect. They've written a book on this. They're going to be here to tell us more about life inside one of the UK's most notorious prisons. That's this Friday around about 3:30 in association with CrimeCon, the world's #1 event for true crime and mystery. It's 20 to 3. Let's go back to your calls. Are you finding that Labour are about to solve the immigration crisis? You have to sort of have a little laugh when you utter that sentence, because it sounds utterly preposterous. But today, Keir Starmer laid out his stall. Are you believing him? This is Nigel in Portsmouth. Nigel, good afternoon. What have you got for us?
Good afternoon, Ian. Yeah, and obviously the immigration thing there. Obviously, you've got legal immigration, illegal immigration, immigration we don't even know about. It's kind of multifaceted.
Yep.
But the reason I'm calling is I recently actually employed for a day to asylum seekers living in an asylum seeker hotel or refugee hotel.
Okay.
Basically, a friend of mine needed an end of tenancy clean. So I phoned a really, really reputable cleaning company, one I've used lots of times, and she said, okay, it's quite short notice. I've got 2 cleaners available. Here's the postcode, go and pick them up. So I just went to the postcode, and it was a hotel. And out they come from the hotel with their Henry Hoover, their pinnies on, like in uniform,
really?
All the cleaning stuff, their cleaning totes. And I noticed it was just a sea of electric bikes with, you know, food delivery, you know, the regular kind of, you know, just eat delivery or those kind of things, just plugged into like an absolute spaghetti of chargers, just right outside the hotel. I thought, like, the people running the hotel can see exactly what's going on, literally exactly what's going on.
But these are people that are not meant to work, right?
They're not supposed to be working. And as it happened to two cleaners that I had, one of them didn't speak English, the other one spoke French reasonably well. She spoke French, and my French is pretty good. So, I spoke, and she was just here from Algeria. We've been on holiday to Algeria. It's a lovely country. She was here from Algeria just to earn money, and she's waiting to be housed.
So she's trying to claim asylum?
She's in the process of claiming asylum.
So she's in that process, which could be years away, of course, and hence the reason why she's stuffed into a hotel at the moment.
Of course, but once they're here, that's it. They don't go back.
It's pretty hard. I mean, it would have been... I doubt whether you had time or even the inclination to get into the conversation of, why she claimed to be needing asylum and what excuse she would give or what reason she would give for saying.
Actually, Ian, I did have time to get into that conversation, and she said she doesn't know. It's her solicitor that deals with all of that.
Wow. Aren't you meant to be escaping like a murderous tyrant or something?
You're not in Algeria. Algeria is a lovely country. It may not be perfect, and the economy is quite tough.
We're living in a world where people want to move around, right? That's simple as that. I don't know why anybody can't get their head around that. It's not like a denial of somebody who is escaping a tyrannical regime. It's just a fact. Some people might well be, if you're trying to get out of a war zone, I understand why you might want to leg it. Where you leg it to is another question. But people also want to move around. We've got 24-hour social media, 24-hour news. It's a digital world. It's not hard to see those options laid out like a buffet online. If you've got the means to get over here, that's what someone's going to do, right?
Of course, they're frustrated. They're really kind of, cherry on top of the cake as far as I'm concerned. On the way back, they phoned her and gave her the choices for dinner that night.
Really?
And,
but you didn't get a call from home with a choice.
I just thought, I've been paying you £20 an hour. You don't have any bills to pay.
20 quid an hour?
Well, that's what a cleaner is, isn't it? You want a cleaner at short notice, it's 20 quid an hour.
How does that work then, without you divulging your own business need? But how are you able to employ that person?
Oh, I just needed an end of tenancy clean.
So you did it through an agency?
Yeah, a friend of mine moved. No, I phoned a cleaning company. Before, and they said, we've got these two ladies. The problem is they haven't got transport. You need to go to pick them up. So I went to pick them up and drop them off afterwards. And if you're running, and I just kept thinking, wow, you're running £200 a day. You have no bills to pay, literally no bills to pay.
Yeah.
I just felt like I was paying them twice.
Well, well, of course you are, and they shouldn't be working at all.
But the people at the hotel, they can see it. They can see all the bikes charging up.
So they're all delivering. So the ones who aren't cleaning are delivering food and all those kind of jobs.
Just like there were, in the morning I didn't notice it because in the morning I just thought something's a bit off. But then it was when they got the call as I was driving them back. What do you want for dinner tonight? That's when the penny really dropped. And then I noticed at least 20 e-bikes being charged up. And it was an absolute, an extension lead, an extension lead for an extension lead. And they were just charging them up. And so the people running it, they absolutely... When you come out holding a Henry Hoover, you're wearing a penny, you've got your tote with all your cleaning things, the people running it should be saying, hang on a minute, where are you going?
Well, they would be contacting the Home Office... or the local, branch of, and saying, I think we've got a problem here. Yeah, I got 30...
But they're not, because it's money for them, isn't it?
Yeah, of course, and it's not just money, it's the top money you can get.
It's top money, really is.
So your hotel is literally booked chocker for years, something that would never, ever happen.
Yeah, and in the case of this particular hotel, it's kind of, it's really close to a crematorium. And it's one of those hotels that it was where I've been to loads of funerals there, and it's where you hold the wake.
Yeah.
And it is, and all the staff made redundant, the same old story.
So that's
really
gone.
Is.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, it's a loss to the community. It really is a big loss to the community. And it's not right. But our politicians just can't see it. They are scared.
Yeah.
Why isn't someone going there and saying, we're going to crush all your bikes?
Yeah. This is what you're doing here is completely off the charts in terms of what you're allowed to do. Nigel, that's a great insight. What a call! Thank you. And nice to speak, Nigel in Portsmouth. Look, we know that's going on all over the country, right? We absolutely know that is not an exclusive story, but it's a gobsmacker when you hear it. Nigel in Portsmouth. Thank you to him. More from you in a few moments' time. The central question, do you now trust Labour to sort the immigration crisis? We'll take calls on the man whose house was raided, 6 coppers, because they thought he was an anti-Semite. Turns out it was actually the very opposite to that. In any case, regardless, it was just a comment on Twitter in reply to someone else. All of that. Knock on the door. You're coming with us. Get out the cuffs. 8 hours in the cell. And then released. As it turns out, he'd done nothing wrong, which I think most people had sort of worked out beforehand. Comments on that one as well. That mysterious picture of the German Chancellor Hertz, Macron and Starmer apparently having a cocaine party. Have you seen that online? I mean, talk about stuff that goes viral. Which is fine if you're just having a joke about it. Oh, look, it looks like he's got something else on his desk. No, these are people that are actually saying, I think they were taking... We'll talk a little bit more about that maybe in the next section, because I've got a lot to say on that, just in terms of how social media works. And also this, time to find out how you could be with a chance of winning this incredible weekend away. It's at the end of May. It's in Munich. It's to watch the biggest game, pretty much the biggest game on the planet, but certainly the biggest game in European football, the Champions League final. And in addition to all of that, thanks to our colleagues at talkSPORT, we're also putting £5,000 in your pocket to spend however you want. Have a listen to the details.
Win a once-in-a-lifetime trip to watch the Champions League final live. Go to talksport.com/win for your chance to embark on the ultimate odyssey of football ecstasy. With 2 tickets to the Champions League final live at the iconic Munich Football Arena, Germany, including flights, accommodation, and an uber-massive £5,000 in your hand. How about that? Enter online now at talksport.com/win. Terms and conditions apply. Achtung, baby.
18 plus, UK, excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win all of that, simply text the word football to 83338 by the 16th of May at 11 p.m. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission, or send your name and number by post to Champions League final competition, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 21st of May. This is a TalkSPORT limited competition run on TalkSPORT Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
Nigel realises he don't want career politicians in his party. He doesn't want these waste of time, people that have just got no career or no business mind behind. He wants real people that know what they're talking about in business, and obviously someone that can get behind them on apprenticeships. I mean, apprentices are the future, James.
What really is at the back of the minds of some of these lefty...
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
One here from Guy in Lancashire who says, reference the chap who got searched. This is the man whose home was raided by Kent police. Guy says, I got pulled at border control coming into the country because a logo on my T-shirt triggered an AI investigation on the airport cameras. I saw the funny side of it and so did the border control, but he explained the reason for the trigger. AI is analysing us all. Best regards, says Guy in Lancashire. And you can laugh at that, of course, and go, wow, that's oh, yeah, he had a logo and it said X, Y, Z. And they thought it said something else, or it was a symbol of, bad intent. It's quite worrying, actually, isn't it? I mean, deeply worrying that that's how it's working and that's the future of how business will be done. Everything from medicine to education through to crime fighting, and there will be some great applications of it, and I know when it's fine-tuned people will go, wow, that's amazing, but in the meantime we end up with stuff like this. We're going to talk in just a moment to Nigel down in London. Before we do, it's the Voice of Doom. I think I'm right in saying day 6 possibly of the Voice of Doom. Day 6, no one's got this one right so far. It is the political mystery voice. Here's the question: who is this?
This is so interesting.
Any ideas? Don't phone, of course, because there aren't any prizes, but you can message if you want to have a crack at it. 87222. Here it is again.
This is so interesting.
It is not Nick... what's his name? Hancock... not Nick Hancock. What's his name? Matt Hancock. Matt Hancock. Nick Hancock's a comedian. Matt Hancock. It's not Matt Hancock. It does sound very much like... Have another listen.
This is so interesting.
That really sounds like Matt Hancock. It's not Matt Hancock. In fact, I hope they didn't mess up when they made this. Who made this one? Was it Dave? I think it was Dave put this one together, wasn't it? Yeah. Maybe he got the wrong clip. It's someone else. They could be past or present. They might be an MP, probably are an MP, past or present. But who is it? We'll tell you the answer on the other side of the news at 3. Have one more listen to the voice.
This is so interesting.
87222. Nigel in London. What have you got for us, Nigel? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I was listening to your, I think, gentleman from the Prisons Union, was it? Or representative a while ago. I thoroughly agree with him. But I think that what we need to do in this country, which is going to cause upset so many people who are just so pathetic.
Yeah.
I think all prison officers should have the minimum of a taser and or the option to have a firearm. You can't expect people to go into work in a controlled environment when they are completely and utterly outnumbered and face being scarred for life or even killed. And, our jails in this country are clearly not fit for purpose. If you ever want to have an hour's worth of interesting entertainment,
there's
a TV series on, I think it's on Netflix or Sky, or you see it on YouTube, called Jail.
Okay.
And that is a really interesting fly-on-the-wall documentary about jails in America. Now, for those who don't know, when you get arrested in the United Kingdom, you go to a police station.
Yeah.
In America, you don't. You go to a jail, and you're processed by the county sheriff's department or the county marshal, wherever it may be, there, and then you're discharged into that service. You stay there till you go to court.
Yeah.
You're then either released or you stay in custody at the jail, and then on conviction, you go to prison.
Yeah.
But they're much, much tougher regimes. If people misbehave, they're put in solitary. If they're violent, they're put in what they call a detention chair. But we're too frightened to do that because we're worried about the rights of prisoners over the safety and the health of prison.
100%. I mean, I find it incredible that you don't at least have a taser on you. I mean, I know,
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
It's extraordinary. And you have a little baton and maybe some pepper spray.
It's just ridiculous. I'm sorry. I mean, these guys, they don't get paid a lot of money, and I don't think the risk is worth the reward. Yeah. They clearly need a considerable amount more money.
Yeah, imagine going into work and doing that every day. I mean, the job of policing is hard enough. Being a prison officer, certainly in those areas of the prison system, must be harrowing and terrifying. Listen, as ever, Nigel, thank you very much indeed. I will come back to the Macron photograph in the next hour, but somebody here called Naga says, trying to pass off Macron's rap as a tissue. How many people leave a snotty tissue on a table? 0. Well, I think probably more people leave a snotty tissue on a table than leave a wrap of cocaine on a table. I would say on balance across the world at any given hour. Zelensky is king of the beak. Well, they've been saying that online forever with no notice. Zelensky wasn't there, by the way, at the meeting, but 3 major leaders were, surrounded by 35 other people in the room, and then 120 members of the press, because, yeah, obviously that's what you do, leave cocaine around on the table. Apart from that, if you don't believe any of that, then just look at the picture. It's a picture of a tissue. I'd like to ask Naga and others, I mean, I assume you're just jesting. It's quite funny to joke about, by the way. I mean, who doesn't like a good old joshing of an international leader suggesting they're on the toot rather than doing business, solving a war? Of course, that's satirically quite amusing, so I get that. But if you really believe, I mean, people online are losing their minds. It's quite clear what they're doing. Really? I will come back to that. There's more to be said. And the voice of doom. Whose voice is this?
This is so interesting.
If you think you know, 87222 will hopefully tell you after the news.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And welcome back 3 minutes after 3 o'clock. As we've been discussing, Keir Starmer's words this morning, he said Britain risks becoming an island of strangers. This is the Prime Minister warning about immigration. It's a major launch, a major crackdown on immigration, he says, vowing to take back control of the borders, oh yes, and close the book on what he called a squalid chapter in politics and economics. I'm not absolutely sure I know what he's talking about, nor does he, I would imagine, but he's going to get tough, all right? Do you want to give him the benefit of the doubt? Can you now trust Labour to solve the immigration crisis? Your thoughts on that. Also this afternoon, police have been told to focus on catching actual criminals after a retired police constable was handcuffed by his former force over a social media post that was actually warning about the rise in anti-Semitism. He was kind of accused of the very opposite. It all panned out in the end, but not after a lot of jip, handcuffs and 8 hours in a prison cell. More on that as well. And a jigsaw puzzle artist has accused a games company of being woke after they told him to remove the St. George's flag from one of his puzzles. Seriously? It's the world we're currently living in. It's upside down, kids. More on that a little later as well. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk 0344 499 1000. Now, before we carry on, let's get the Voice of Doom. Have we got a winner on the Voice of Doom? Remember, just before the news, we played you this voice.
This is so interesting.
Who is that, if you think you know? Well, these are some of the guesses. David Mundell, Diana, George Osborne, Richard Dawkins, Michael Fabricant, Lord Cannon, Nigel Farage, Ian Duncan. A few people said Ian Duncan Smith. It's not Ian Duncan Smith. Benedict Spence. It isn't. David Mundell. That's another guess at that. Ben Bradshaw. No, we have not got a correct answer. Not a correct answer, which means it rolls over for day 7 tomorrow. It is back. Will we get a winner? It's not, again, I constantly say this, it's no more tricky than what we thought were some of the trickiest ones we've done that went in about 1 day or 2. This is day 7 tomorrow. The Voice of Doom returns. Now, police have been told to focus on catching actual criminals. This is after a retired officer, as we've been talking about, was arrested. He was handcuffed by his former force over a tweet that he wrote. The tweet was about anti-Semitism. Julian Falk served 10 years with Kent Police. He was arrested by 6 officers after telling a pro-Palestinian activist that they were 1 step away from storming Heathrow looking for Jewish arrivals. The force has since apologised, but the case is the latest in a string of heavy-handed police actions over so-called thought crimes. James Essis is a psychotherapist and founder of Just Therapy. James, good afternoon to you.
Afternoon, Ian.
I mean, it's strange what happens in these situations. That word groupthink seems to be getting used a lot at the moment. And in this classic case, I suppose what happened was that the guy had actually written the very opposite. The sentiment of what he was writing was the very opposite to what he was accused of. But nonetheless, something on the system went, oh my God, we've got an anti-Semite on us. He's used the term storming Heathrow Airport. This could be a terrorist. Let's get down there. And when they get down there, they find a former colleague, but not after searching his house quite thoroughly and then sticking him in handcuffs. What is happening to the human condition, do you sense here, James?
Oh, it's a form of social contagion, kind of mass panic and hysteria. I mean, with Mr. Fawkes, even if he had written what they accused him of, the police should not have been banging down his door in the way that they did. You know, we've got this 2-tier justice system now where, although the police are aware that knife crime's on the rise, as is mobile theft, we know what's going on with grooming gangs across the country, and yet they're happy to devote endless amount of time, resources to tackling hate crime and non-crime hate incidents in the most excessive way. I mean, 6 police officers rocking up to this man's house, putting him in handcuffs. It's utter madness. But this demonstrates part of the problem with the subjectivity of things like hate, because everything's in the eye of the beholder. And so what you've got now are police forces dedicating time to analysing posts on X and other social media platforms, which we know are open to misinterpretation because people have got character limitations. So it's very difficult to get across the exact point you're making sometimes. And we're living in a world now in which people are almost looking for reasons to take offence at things.
What I find kind of strange about this, James, is that you'd have thought by now we've had enough of these nonsense examples that everyone involved, like in the police or any other sort of area of law enforcement, would go, hang on a second, before we go down in the van with 6 of you, do you remember what happened the other day with that couple that to put something in a WhatsApp group? We don't want to be like those coppers because we know what happened. It all exploded. The police ended up with egg on their face and everybody talked about how stupid we were. So let's not be those people. But no, they carry on for some reason, despite all the evidence saying that this kind of chasing up of non-crime, I mean, the clue is in that statement, seems to be a valuable use of resources.
Well, some of these people are diehard activists. They genuinely think they're doing the right thing and protecting society from horrific bigots like myself and others. But others are actually just terrified. They're worried that people will come for them and their livelihoods and their reputations if they don't uphold this. I mean, from a therapeutic perspective, what we're doing in our society is really very bad because we're creating this kind of paranoia across society. I mean, I say paranoia, but it's not paranoia if they really are coming after you, and they really are coming after us. We're creating a culture of victimhood, which is, from a therapeutic perspective, and I see this in my practice a lot, it's very addictive, right, to see yourself as an eternal victim, to blame for your woes. And people are looking, as I said earlier, to be offended. And we're now finding scenarios in which our government, our police force are mollycoddling adults, teaching them that words are akin to violence. I mean, we're really doing a great disservice to the British public.
Could it be, trying to be, I don't want to use the word generous, but it's the nearest I can think of it. Do you think it could be, James, that, you know, the police have had a bit of a torrid time over the last few years, and they've been accused of all sorts of things, from malfeasance in office to ineptitude, murder in some cases. Goodness me, it's been the headlines have not been, it's not been the best era for the boys and girls in blue. And I wonder whether, you know, if somebody had written on social media, they'd identified a certain type of person, male or female, that they really like, and I'm going to go out tonight and I'm going to kill 3 in the whatever area of the UK, and I'm going to do it in a brutal, torturous manner and abuse them before, all that stuff. If they put that on there and the police didn't act, then they would be accused forever. Hang on, it was written right in front of you. You could see with your own eyes there was something terrible here, but you chose not to act because everybody said it's just social media and they're just hurty words. So are the police caught in a bit of a rock and a hard place on this one?
No, the police have to take a risk-based approach. No one can complain about them doing that. But in reality, that's not what's happening. We're not seeing overt criminal threats being overlooked. We're finding things like we saw today with Graham Linehan in Westminster Magistrates Court, now going to be on trial in September for harassment because he's gone online and essentially told a trans person that men cannot become women. That's the type of thing we're finding the police focusing on. But I mean, look, your point around swinging too far the other direction, it is true. I mean, we saw this with the grooming gangs, right? Police, fearful of being accused of being racist, are now not calling out things when they should be. We've seen it with the trans agenda as well. People are very fearful of being called out as some sort of bigot, and we've seen what happened with homophobia. You know, some bad things took place in this country, no doubt about it. But now, in an attempt to kind of right historic wrongs, we've swung far too far the other direction.
Yeah. Curious times. I sense this won't be the last time we speak on something like this, James, sadly. It'd be great to say, this is the last one, but there's going to be another one coming along next week. Don't anybody worry about that. Listen, James, great to have you on. Thank you. James Esses, psychotherapist, founder of Just Therapy, a very common sense voice in that world. You don't always get a common sense voice in that world. It is bonkers that we're in this place. It is absolutely nuts we're in this place, but we are in a weird world. I mean, I mentioned earlier about this weird photograph that is doing the rounds, and I'm trying to think of the name of the guy that kind of started it, but a very big, 5 million followers. His name escapes me now. Who started this? So it was a photograph of the German Chancellor, Mr. Macron, and Keir Starmer in a room discussing Ukraine. Okay, and in the picture, Macron has left what assumes is a snotty tissue. Who wants to leave a snotty tissue on the desk? And this guy suggested that all 3 of them basically were doing cocaine in this picture, and I mean, it's sort of beyond funny in a curious way. And I said earlier that somebody tweeted and said, trying to pass off Macron's cocaine wrap as a tissue. How many people leave a snotty tissue on a table? 0, says this person. Well, I would imagine, probably if I walk around any busy office, I'm probably on any day of the week going to find some people who've left a snotty tissue. You can see the imagery on screen right now. There it is. There's Macron. And Starmer is there, the German Chancellor is there, and the press are there. What you also don't see in that photograph is that every advisor for all three of those leaders would have been in the room as well. So amidst all of this, very public, three very high-profile leaders decide to get out the marching powder. I mean, you've just got to ask yourself that, really? Then they invite the press in, of which there's, you know, probably another 50 of those. And when Macron realises he's left a snotty rag on the table, he whips it off the table, as anybody would. It's not very hygienic. But somebody then tweeted it was cocaine. And it's just such a bizarre thing to tweet. If you do a close-up of it, you can clearly see it isn't. And then Matt Wallace, who's a well-known conspiracy theorist online, has just retweeted the classic slightly tweaked tissue to make it look a little bit more plastic, as if it's a bag of cocaine. And then I get, again, we're talking about weirdness on social media, the guy that got arrested by the police. Edor sends me this, who says, this absolutely encapsulates the insanity of the world we are in. Funny-looking tissue, mate. I think we can judge your leanings. We know you won't air my WhatsApp. Stop the Starmer worship. Now, that has to be a joke, right? I've just spent 2 hours slaughtering Keir... So Keir Starmer's meant to be on the coke as well, is he? Oh, wow. That's an interesting one. I didn't think anyone actually had gone that far with this stupidity. So if you have a different view to Edor, that makes you a worshipper of Keir Starmer. That is how low the intellectual bar is on this kind of nonsense. That's seriously, and I don't know whether he's joshing around like the previous guy. He's probably mucking around, because anyone who wants to see the real image can see for themselves somebody did take a snap. I mean, of course it's the idea that you would, in a very public meeting, public in the sense there's lots of people there, sit there with a bag of cocaine. I mean, not even a little wrap of, I mean, a whole bag of the stuff. You'd have to be right on the marching powder, wouldn't you? You would be right into it. And then you're about to give a press conference, so all the press are there as well. Oh, look, we accidentally left our cocaine. Really? But it doesn't stop social media doing what it's doing. Even, I mean, the world's, when it comes to political half-wits, it's hard to find one greater than Andrew Bridgen. But even he joined in with it. Looks a bit suspicious to me. Mate, come on, behave yourself. Yes, it's funny to satirise the moment. Have I got news for you? We'll probably jump on it and go, was it a wrap of cocaine or was it a tissue? And then they'll impose something on it to make it even more amusing. But no one with a brain seriously thinks that happened. And I suppose the question I always raise in these moments is, when people make those comments, I believe it is this, do they never think through the obvious? Like, there were other people sitting in that room, like advisors and probably the work experience kid who works with the advisors. And then they open the door for a press conference. They did. You really think that's what they would have been doing at that moment, while talking about international issues such as trying to stop a war that's going on in Ukraine? It almost takes nothing to try and work it out. But it doesn't stop social media, and then everybody loses their mind, and we have the curious situation where you've got a police arresting a guy because of something on social media. They're losing their mind. Zelensky apparently is already well known for the marching powder, because there's a couple of clips of him, or certainly a prominent clip of him online, where he looks as if he's wiping his nose during a press conference. So therefore that is evidence to show that it's a bag of cocaine. There is a load of other people then start to post their versions of the tissue, and it's just a tissue, right? I mean, it could not be more obviously a tissue. As long as you don't, if you want to zoom in really hard, it looks like the Antarctic, because it's just like white. If you want to add a light or a filter to it, it might look like a plastic bag. I mean, the list goes on. Rob says, no, it's Coke, and the other guy grabbed a Coke spoon. I'm so tired of the lies. It's clear as day what they did. These are humans that live among us. Sherry says it's a gross tissue. It's not Coke. No one uses a bag that big, not even in the movies. Come on, peeps. And the spoon was a coffee spoon. Thank you for some clarity. But that will continue, and it will continue with people genuinely believing this. Cack. Our lines are open, 0344 499 1000. More comment from you on the way. This is Talk.
I think it's really important to be clear about this. So much of what is in that green paper is absolutely right. We have to reduce the benefit bill in this country. We have to get people back into work. Work is absolutely the right place for people to be. And I think we've gone through a generation where the benefit bill has skyrocketed. But cutting support for disabled people doesn't solve that problem.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Nick says, if you're a fan of Keir Starmer, I'd hate to hear what his enemies have to say. Yeah, thank you for Nick. That was reference to a previous tweeter that suggested, because I didn't join in with the Macron and Starmer were taking cocaine at an international summit on war. Because I didn't believe that, therefore that makes you a massive supporter of Starmer. It might just make you a massive supporter of the truth and a massive supporter of trying to winkle out lunatics whenever you see them. Don't take my word for it, there's many of them out there. It's not a photograph, Ian, it's a video. I know, we've just played the video. I do know that, Bridget. We just played the video. We've just been playing it as I've been speaking over it. There is also a spoon. Well, as somebody said, I don't know if it's a spoon or a bit of cardboard. Looks more like a coffee spoon, actually. There's the video being played again as we speak. It's Starmer, it's Merz, it's Macron, and apparently they're all on the Charlie. That's what they've been doing, marching powder, them and their 30 advisors sitting at the other end of the table that you can't see, merrily doing it. And as somebody said, and a bag bigger than the kind of thing you might find in some kind of dark Bronx Netflix show. But Macron must be the chief dealer in all of this thing. He's got the big bag of dust. And by coincidence, all three of them are into it. Yeah. I mean, Starmer is the kind of guy that probably smoked a spliff at university I don't say that to malign him, but the kind of man that would, you know, probably get dizzy if he went near an air freshener these days. But apparently, no, he's tooting away at an international meeting on stopping war. I mean, Ed, why would somebody want to believe that guff? It takes no working, you haven't got to be a journalist to work out and just follow the logic of the, you know, logically speaking, if nothing else. On balance, would three people with a load of other people in the room and the world's press, would they believe that these three men all simultaneously all happen to be cokeheads? It's incredible. This from Martin, who says, bag of cocaine, I think not. I hate the pair of them, but I'm not willing to be part of, with my common sense and educated vision, for this nonsense. Come on, are people really this stupid? Yeah, they are. That's the problem. And when you've got, I mentioned Andrew Bridgen, and I know Andrew Bridgen is not, you know, he's not the kind of guy that you would probably on most days of the week. I mean, if you look at the kind of stuff that it's annoying, isn't it? Because every now and again you'll get somebody who takes on a good cause, but they're also around them, the furniture around them is so rotten and discredited that it's hard to take the credible bit seriously, because everything else they've said has been just nonsense. And Bridgen sort of falls into that gap. You know, you used to quote Alex Jones as a valid source of a news story or whatever. And the list went on, just to see the demise of the man. Even he jumped in on it. And I noticed a lot of people now getting into the, what are called contrails, but they're reworded as chemtrails because it's chemicals. Somebody worked it out the other day. A person posted on social media, and it was somebody with quite a high profile going, what on earth is this going on in the sky? Because that's usually it started, have you seen this? And it was some chemical trails, which is something that happens when at a certain altitude, if the temperatures are right, then the jet stream that is left, the trail that is left by an aeroplane, remains there for some time. They can stay there for hours, by the way, because that's how it works. And of course, over the years, it's been used as a conspiracy theory. These are chemicals that are being, we're being sprayed with these chemicals. So somebody said, I'm in, you know, I don't know, Worcestershire, look at these clouds above me. And then somebody else tweeted, yeah, it's the same in Norfolk. Have a look here. Look, we got the same thing. They're not even hiding it now, Katie. And they showed a picture, and then somebody else said, I'm in Wales, North Wales, and then another one in Lancashire, and on it went, you know. And somebody at the very end of all of this big trail, sorry, no pun, a big trail of tweets, said, based on what, you know, about 30 people had posted, there would have to have been about, you know, 150 jets up there spraying, and nobody ever there's no one whistleblower over the 50 years that's gone, actually it was us that did it. Yeah, we were giving people cancer or whatever the heck they're supposed to have done. And that suddenly, for some reason, found a kind of new a new prominence. The old chemtrail ones are back. I mean, that went out the window for a bit, the chemtrail thing, and now it's kind of returned with a vengeance. And then you get a meteorologist who will go, actually, that's a cumulus nimbus or whatever cloud. To which somebody will always reply, you don't know what you were talking about, mate. Well, yeah, it's somebody who's a meteorologist who knows exactly what clouds do in certain temperatures. Anyway, the world we live in. Simon is in Devon. Simon, how you doing?
Yeah, what's that? Hello, hi, you all right?
Yeah, very good. Welcome to the programme. What have you got for us?
Well, just I was listening to one of your callers earlier talking about, obviously, the prison system.
Yes.
And everything that's going on in the prisons and the unsafe kind of, stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
Well, I worked for a long time within the mental health system, and to be honest with you, I worked in quite a high security unit. And we were working with a lot of high-profile cases, murderers, pedophiles, rapists. And we were outnumbered 1 to 1 most of the time. And we were then put on this new ward where we got government-funded ward, and they put on, because they wanted to give the patients a lot more freedom, so they gave them metal cutlery. They gave them boiling hot water in the middle of the unit. They can access at any point with copious amounts of sugar. well, you mix up the boiling hot water and the sugar, and you've got a nasty little paste.
Of course you have.
Which got
creates
thrown in the face of a lot of people.
Permanent damage as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. With the metal cutlery, I got stabbed in the arm. People weren't, this is stuff that we were always put in these positions. And I know this is mental health. Well, obviously, it's in the NHS. It's not, prison service, but we work within the prison service because a lot of our patients were lifers, and they were going to be there forever. And I just feel that, this is something that's not changing, and it's never going to change because for some reason, and I get a certain amount of it, but we give a lot of rights to the prisoners, to people who really shouldn't have the rights anymore. And we give a lot of leniency to the prisoners, to the patients, to the people like that. But really, they took away their right to have that when they committed their crime.
100%. Did they used to be, I remember speaking to I can't remember what it was, the governor. I did talk to the governor of this particular prison at the time, or one of the officers on a wing, but he was saying, this was, a few years ago, is it used to be the case that on the lifers wing, you never got any trouble. You never really got any, on the Raw 43ers, you never got any trouble. But, that one over there where you've got the thieves that are in and out and the assault, that you get the trouble there. But the lifers are pretty much calm most of the time. But he said what's happened recently, there's a different kind of lifer we've got over the last 20 years, and that's sort of what's changed things.
Yeah. I mean, now because you've got a lot of the mental health issues that come with it, and because they're now being put on wards.
100%. Yeah. So you've got terrorists and mental health issues, and between the two, it's a terrible cocktail if you're a prison officer.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we had, and I don't mean to, because obviously I know a lot of your listeners don't want to hear a lot of the bad stuff that's going on in these places, but we had an incident where, we had 3 very high-profile people over a period of a weekend able to sexually assault another person within the same wing. Wow. Now, how that is even possible on a ward that's being supervised 24/7 is beyond me.
Yeah.
And I feel that we had a lot of, and I don't mean this in any disrespect to anybody because everyone has to work, but a lot of our staff were agency staff. A lot of our staff were people that, they're just there for the day to get paid a lot of money, whereas if they don't care, they'll sit in the office and just go on computers. And this is a problem that is all over across the board. You've got people with complacency and people who just don't want their, be there.
Yep.
And then they put people in very bad situations. I mean, the reason I got stabbed was because a lady decided to call a gentleman patient four-eyed, and I'm not going to say the other word.
Okay.
And he took it out on me because he's always been told never to hit a woman. But
nice.
We had metal knives and forks. Why are we allowing people who are in the system to have metal knives and forks?
Yeah.
They would, put stuff down behind their radiators in their wards. They sharp tools so they could have little shanks. And, it's mental because it's not just prisons that it's happening in. It's happening across the board.
Yeah.
And it's happening in mental health services as well. And I think this is a big overhaul that needs to happen within all of that.
Yeah.
It's one thing to bring in a security team, which now I know a lot of mental health places have, as well as the staff. But you're still going to have that same problem, especially within the mental health service, because the lifers within mental health, they're mentally unwell.
So indeed,
they're not seeing it as they're in there for life. They're seeing it as we're all their enemies.
100%. And of course, there's going to be an increase in those issues as well. Listen, Simon, I have to move. That's a really interesting call. I'm glad you survived it all, despite the obvious trauma that goes with the job. Simon in Devon, thank you to him. Just gone 3:30. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I never thought we'd get such a response on President Macron's tissue, but we'll come back to that shortly. I want to move to this story, 25 to 4, by the way. A jigsaw puzzle artist says a woke retailer told him to remove a St. George's flag from its puzzle as part of a diversity drive. Mike Jupp was also asked to change images in his I Love Spring puzzle, including a busty woman in a bath and Morris dancers, after the company Gibson's Games mistook them for Orange Order symbols. Mr. Jupp made the changes, but has now stopped working with the company, calling their actions disrespectful. Let's speak to the jigsaw artist himself. Mike Jupp is with us. Mike, good afternoon to you, sir.
Hello, Ian. I'm not sure the word artist is appropriate.
Well,
cartoonist, yes.
Yeah, well, cartoonist, yes, that maybe describes it. How long have you been doing this, by the way? Has this been your lifelong career?
Well, basically, about 1974, I figured I couldn't do anything else. So I've been freelance ever since. But I live in Bognor Regis, so it's like paradise if you're a cartoonist.
Oh, of course it is, yeah. I mean, the material around there is absolutely, off the scale. So, listen, but broadly speaking, I mean, nobody ever really considers the fact that when they're doing a big old jigsaw that's been, a combination, which is essentially a cartoon or whatever, or even a photograph. Somebody originally made that image, and that's, of course, where you come in. And you've been doing this for a long time. Do you have a certain theme that you seem to hone towards?
It's called Go Down the Pub, have a pint of cider and a cigar, and try and think of something.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
I tell you what, with all the doom and gloom that's been on your show and everyone else's today, it's just a reminder that I don't want to be too serious here, but it is a cathartic exercise to sit there trying to put together little bits of coloured cardboard, and if you can make people laugh, I think that's a bonus at the moment.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we'll come to the issue in just a second. So, broadly speaking, you draw a picture, then a company makes it into a jigsaw. What happens?
Sometimes, over the past, I've done illustrations for my own benefit, and actually, the very first one, if you remember a company, well, they're still there, Waddingtons.
Waddingtons, famously,
yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, they used to do jigsaw puzzles, but I think they gave that up. Anyway, I did a picture while I was working in Holland. Someone asked me to do I Love Amsterdam, so that started the ball rolling. And when I came back to Bognor, I did a big illustration called I Survived Bognor Regis, which involved a treasure hunt as well. And then Waddington's picked up on it and said, could we have that as a jigsaw puzzle, which never, ever occurred to me.
Nice.
So I sent them an image, and they sent it back to me, loads of Barrow circles around all the rude bits, and said, take them out. So eventually, when Waddington's changed over, I nearly said something rude then, Gibson's picked up that particular image and changed it from I Survived Bognor Regis to I Love the Seaside.
Right.
And that's when my I Love thing sort of came along. So I've basically done I Love whatever.
Yep.
Haven't done I Love the Inland Revenue yet.
No, nobody should ever go there, to be honest, Mike. That's a foolish journey.
Some of the pieces will be missing.
That's always, yeah. And they'll ask for them back, but double.
Yeah. Yes.
That's the way it will work. So with this particular picture, so you'd put a St. George's flag in a puzzle, basically?
Well, no, what happened was, and I don't want to be disparaging to this company that I worked with for 25 years. After I finished my TV stuff, I came out and went back to my primary love, which is illustration. Yeah. And I say they picked up on it, and I had a lovely working relationship with them until 2 years ago, when the very beloved CEO, great man, he retired, and I've got to be so careful what I say here.
All right.
So the CEO changed to a member of the family, and then I got a email saying, Michael, your I Love Spring is one of our most profitable puzzles. And here came the dreaded words. However, The team consider changes have to be made to make it less offensive.
Right.
The fact that it's been selling for nearly a decade, thousands of people have got it. Oh no, we have to. Oh look, I'm just looking at the television. Something awful's come up. It's in one of my pictures. It is this nonsense. A word you've used a lot today.
Yeah.
This nonsense that you must appease two people instead of making enjoyment for millions.
Correct. That's precisely the kind of weird terrain we've found ourselves in, this sort of no man's land of insanity.
Well, without being too specifically serious, I think Adolf Hitler, when he joined is it Anton Drexler's Nazi party, I think they put him in as number 500 or something, where there was only 5 people in it.
Wow.
And so you go from 5 people in the fledgling Nazi party and you end up at Auschwitz.
Yeah.
So minorities can be very, very dangerous.
Well, indeed. I mean, I heard somebody recently making exactly that argument that, you know, most of the tyranny that's happened has happened courtesy of minorities. And we're talking about minorities in terms of numbers, by the way, rather than any other sort of specific minority.
Yes, yeah.
Even there, I'm being careful, Mike, you know, just in case. Just in case there are other. So they wanted things removed from this puzzle.
Yeah, well, it's up on the screen now. Well, it is here in Bognor, but things move at the speed of light, but they get here late. So I don't know if you're looking at what I'm looking at, but that was the I Love Spring, which just came out of my septic mind.
Yep.
And I thought, right, what goes on in spring? Well, you have April the 23rd, which is Shakespeare's birthday, St. George's Day, that well-known English saint that came from Turkey. And I thought, let's put all these cliche all these things that the minorities don't let you do anymore, like stereotyping or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the word. Cliche. It is the bread and butter of cartoon and comedy. You know, if some bloke's got one leg and falls over, we all laugh.
Yeah.
Then you'll say, oh, no, you can't do that. But it's human nature to laugh. And it's, like, for instance, remember when that aircraft went missing, the M23 or whatever it was?
Yes.
No one's ever found it.
Yeah.
Well, there was a wonderful cartoon with just the front of that jet sticking out with lockups in garage in London. The caption was, if this thing's not gone by Monday, I'm calling the council.
Yes, yeah. See, that's a brilliant bit of, it's, you know, a dark satire, but that's what it is. And they didn't
let me interrupt you, which is good for me. I love interrupting. On last week in Bognor Regis, there was down a road. Why there's a tyre dump there, but anyway, it caught fire, and there was masses of black smoke going halfway across Sussex. And someone put on Facebook, and I wished it had been me, I see we haven't got a pope yet then.
It's all of that makes us tick and makes life beautiful, you know. But the puzzle people said you've got to get rid of a couple of those symbols. What were so they didn't want the flag in it, is that right?
Well, the flag came out, and I was, I've got to be careful. Listen, right, I'll lay my cards on the table. I've got a lot of homosexual friends. I drink with them. Great. Okay. They just don't want me to join their club, and I don't want to join their club. But they're great people, and they're not always political.
Right, okay.
And the same goes, the classic in this one was again, because it was all cliche spring, you got blossoms and everything, and you got the usual workers' riots or whatever they go out, May Day, all that sort of thing. And then I thought, well, you have druidic ceremonies around that area, and you have Morris dancers.
Yeah.
So I put the Morris dancers in.
Why would that bother anybody that the Morris dancers were in there?
They said because originally I had orange crisscross across the chest, and you got bells, and you all in white, bells down the legs.
Yeah.
I got this cut and paste from Wikipedia from this company I used to work with, saying, could you please remove the orange order? They are some paramilitary group operating from Northern Ireland.
Paramilitary? You're trying to knock out a nice spring picture of England.
Yeah.
And
paramilitaries mincing down the road with bells on their legs.
You can only imagine how hilarious. Wouldn't terrorism be, less of a thing if only they put bells on their legs?
Well, I get terrorism. They're brown envelopes.
There it is. Listen, I get it. Mike, I'm glad... Anyway, you're always busy. You've been busy for years. You're very well respected in your field. I'm sure, you know...
Yes, I had my work spread over many fields.
Yes, nice answer. I like it. Mike, we will speak again. Mike Jupp, the jigsaw artist that found himself at the other end of someone else's idea, as he said, his words, a minority who said, well, that bit might be offensive, so get rid of that picture or that bit. Gibson Games, who are the company that he fell out with, sort of, he did say nice things about them. Their managing director, Kate Gibson, said, we always endeavour to act in line with our values. We wish Mike all the best for his future endeavours. Endeavours, I think I should say, yes. I also managed to re-emerge the word homosexual, which I don't think I've heard for a long, long time. Although I did meet a real-life homosexual as well, only yesterday. And that was in Sevenoaks, which is a sort of a very rare sighting. I mean, who would have known how a lone homosexual got out of the City of London is another issue that maybe we'll do a show on that tomorrow, Adam. I think we should. How did he get there? Would it have been, I don't know, who knows how this happened, but there you go. So, but thank you to Mike, and I'm glad he's okay and his gay mates are okay with it, as are all of his other mates, and is everyone else who sees his puzzles. It's all pretty straightforward stuff. But the puzzle company said, no, we might have to change stuff. I hear him. Great call. Thank you to Mike Jupp. 0344 499 1000. Back to that issue of Macron's bag of cocaine. Lee says, I'm in bits here. It's clearly a tissue, but this has been one of the funniest shows yet. I'm creased up how stupid people are. You're not wrong, Lee. Rob says Macron's bag of sniff is more about the total distrust of our political leaders. Starmer says he'll sort immigration and no one believes him, so Macron says it's not coke. It's logical to think they're lying. Yeah, I understand that. Stuart says, it seems strange to me that Starmer is laughing and joking next to Macron, who, while taking tens of millions of pounds of British taxpayers' money to stop the migrants, does absolutely nothing about it. It's a very good point. And one here which I thought was really interesting in terms of how we kind of respond to this stuff, says, where is it? I've got to find it. Oh, come on, Ian, you have to. It's from Grenville. It says, you have to admit it's quite funny seeing the internet do its stuff like this. It makes your day and gives us a good giggle that people believe it. It does. And I think my only issue with it is that the people that believe it are kind of automatically believe it because of their own political allegiance. So it's not a case of they believe it because they're stupid in the kind of conventional sense of the word. They believe it because they want to believe it. This is what they do. A few people who are clearly not fans of the West when it comes to Ukraine and Russia seem to be the kind of people that therefore believe it, which is bizarre in itself. And I would just add, Grenville, because you're quite right. I mean, there is something amusing about this kind of stuff. But when that kind of stuff happens in a slightly more serious way and a more sinister way, and it gets to the point where somebody who's got 5.5 million followers can tell a complete lie on social media, and it finds its way around the world to the point that about 200 million people in half an hour have seen it, then you get into the territory of, well, what is the truth? What sort of weird world are we living in when this sort of den of iniquity called Twitter becomes the bastion for truth, when it's the very antithesis of truth? So I think there's a wider conversation in there as well. But yes, there is something clearly amusing. 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. Now, time now to find out how you could be in with that chance of winning that weekend away in Munich at the end of May to watch the biggest game in European football. We are, of course, talking the Champions League final, and thanks to our colleagues at talkSPORT, this is an absolute belter. You also get £5,000 in your pocket to spend however you like. Have a listen to the details.
Win a once-in-a-lifetime trip to watch the Champions League final live. Go to talksport.com/win for your chance to embark on the ultimate odyssey of football ecstasy. With 2 tickets to the Champions League final live at the iconic Munich Football Arena, Germany, including flights, accommodation, and an uber-massive $5,000 in your hand. How about that? Enter online now at talksport.com/win. Terms and conditions apply. Achtung, baby.
18 plus, UK, excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win all of that, simply text the word football to 83338 by the 16th of May at 11 p.m. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission, or send your name and number by post to Champions League final competition, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO28GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 21st of May. This is a TalkSport limited competition run on TalkSport Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
Nigel realises he don't want career politicians in his party. He doesn't want these waste of time, people that have just got no career or no business mind behind. He wants real people that know what they're talking about in business, and obviously someone that can get behind them on apprenticeships. I mean, apprentices are the future, James.
What really is at the back of the minds of some of these lefty layabouts is if you do a job with your hands, then you are working and in some way perhaps more important, but they don't mean it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
The trouble with contrails, not chemtrails, is they stay in the air for a long, long time. Angela sent a picture of some contrails, what it looks like, I assume, outside her house. Lovely garden, by the way, Angela. Says, I don't think commercial aircraft fly these patterns. This was in Camberley, and if you are so clever, what is it? We checked commercial aircraft app, and there were none in this area. Well, you might have a story on your hands, Angela. I can't explain it. I'm no expert in that. What I do know is that's precisely the pattern that aeroplanes make, and when the ambience and the temperature is at a certain level, they will remain there forever, or it looks like forever. So you'll get obviously you wouldn't have that many planes flying all at the same time. And Brexit Duck says, is it just a conspiracy? I haven't had a chance to click on the link, but I would imagine RAF rainmakers caused the 1952 flood, which is a famous, I think it's in the southwest, Devon somewhere or something. It's a famous story. There is such a thing as you can cloud seed. You can do it. They used to spray crops, if you remember. You can use aircraft and spray, but the idea that we have, governments secretly spraying to give us illnesses and all manner of other things. I mean, they're talking about doing a thing with the sun, aren't they? Which is a slightly different discussion. It ties in, I get it. But yeah, Brexit, thank you for that. I will take a look on my way home. Somebody here, Danny, says geoengineering, not a conspiracy. No, geoengineering is not a conspiracy. It's a brilliant part of advancement of science. That's not in doubt. The idea that we have a secret... they did it in California as well. I just remember in California, it was a test of defences for some reason. Of course, that capability exists. Whether it exists for nefarious reasons on an industrial scale to numb the minds of the masses is, I think, the kind of central point of the issue. Let's go to your calls. Tarquin, down in London. Tarquin, what have you got for us?
Well, guap will be great, that, Ian. Guap will be great, that. I am not a conspiracy theorist, Ian, but when it comes to Mr. David Bellamy looking up at the sky, you look at all this dimming of the sun, and then he looks over across the fields of Wiltshire and he sees Red Ed Miliband sitting there crying on his solar panel because they're not picking up any light whatsoever. And I think we messed up somewhere, didn't we, guys?
I think we need David Bellamy back.
We do, don't we?
The Botanic Man.
The Botanic Man. Apparently he wasn't PC enough and they dispatched him.
Well, that's what it was always. I mean, he mostly said that, I think. But then he was also, to be fair, he was like 110 at that stage, Tarquin.
He was very old. But then again, with age comes wisdom, allegedly.
Well, allegedly. Attenborough seems to have hung on in there, didn't he? But
yeah,
maybe he's got the right views, though. That's what it is, apparently.
That's right. You get to be 99 if you've got the right views in this world.
Yeah,
allegedly.
And the royal family like him and stuff. So
the reason I phoned was originally, well, tell me what you've. I think we're on the same page on this one. Quite frankly, I've just been following through on YouTube with the press conference that he held with the lobby, BBC, who else was there? Yeah, Sly Media, all of those guys, and he always hello, first name from that. He'd like, I'm best buddies with those people. I'll use your Christian name first, and then your affiliation. No, they don't have surnames because he's so mates with these people.
I know it's always a bit odd, that, isn't it? When they go, Chris, have you got a question? It's like, really? Yeah, I'm slightly uncomfortable with that.
He did, and he didn't have one of the talk team there. He had a GB. You nearly said it. He had
no, we did have Theo Ushwood was there.
Theo was there.
Theo was there. Yeah. Oh, but I think Theo's asked so many questions to Keir Starmer, he might have got fed up. So he
Yeah. Well, let me try and goofy because Ian, you're so infectious when it comes to Mr. Merciless. I mean, I go back with you that far. Way
back in the day.
You were brilliant then, as you are now.
Oh, that's very kind. That's very
kind. Yeah. Now listen, I just think trying to be serious, it's very difficult for me to be that in this crazy nuts, clown world age. But I think that I would probably write a thesis as this, an op-ed, that Sir Keir Starmer is currently the best recruiting sergeant for reform that there ever could be. Because 100%. If he was half competent. Instead things like this allegedly stealing the clothes of reform this morning.
Yes.
We're going to take back control. And he uses these NLP phrases like, mark my words, make no mistake, let me be very clear. As if that somehow qualifies what's about to follow it.
I know, mark my words is a beauty. Listen, Tarquin, I have to run because Jeremy Kyle is in the studio.
Tarquin.
And that means I've got to go. That's Tarquin in London.
That's a posh name. I bet he gets out of the bath to have a wee. How are you?
Good as gold at this end.
Jolly good. We are an island of strangers. Honestly. What's happened to him?
5.
I went off on Thursday. He's turned into he's been accused of being like Enoch Powell by one of his own MPs this afternoon.
Exactly, yeah.
Will he go anywhere?
Powell didn't go this far,
I was just speaking to Denny about it. He started using Trump words and phrases like common sense. Sorry, that's ours, you left-wing...
I know.
Honestly.
He's literally... They've sat down in a meeting and gone, right, you've got to... This is serious.
Well, that tells me that 4 years to go, they're terrified of reform already.
But it's not... Here's the thing, Jess. It's not in his belly, is it? It's not in his radar doesn't go
Who is in his belly, do you think? What is in his belly?
What is in his belly? It's a very good point.
So much about Keir Starmer we don't know or we're not allowed to talk about.
Well, indeed.
How are you? We were in the boss's office and you froze, so you were like that. For about 30
What,
seconds.
the screen froze?
Yes, the
Did
screen
it?
froze, yeah.
You're aware of the screen
Now, what
freeze.
did I do all weekend? I was clearing up the illness of your children who have been very ill. So you utter...
Oh, you've had ill kids?
Oh, bless their hearts.
Yeah.
Well, I had that great... Did I tell you last week about Bournemouth General? I haven't told you this, have I?
Don't think so.
Got taken to A&E last Wednesday night, Oliver very poorly. Found myself in a room about the size of this studio, a little green room from the Jeremy Kyle show, but I was minding my own business, and eventually a man at 20 to 3 in the morning with a child that was about 4 with blood pouring out of its mouth, he kept looking at